Chapter 16:26. Among the ethereal clouds, jade palaces were faintly discernible, like a mirage. 1 second ago, a jade pavilion had appeared in the clouds, and the next second, it had turned into a palace. From time to time, floating mountains could be seen. Those mountains had their own charm. Some were beautiful and dangerous, some were solemn and serene, and there were even some that seemed to support the sky, standing between the earth and the sky. But those seemed to be only illusions. A beautiful butterfly flew past, and the clouds flowed. The images of the jade palaces and mountains disappeared. Above the sea of clouds, there was a small boat slowly moving forward. A man stood at the bow of the boat. His white robes fluttered with the clouds, and his snow-like hair hung behind him without any ripples. He was handsome, and there was a pair of crystal-like dragon horns on his head. Although he was handsome, he was not as angular as ordinary handsome men. The lines on his face were gentle, and he gave off a gentle feeling. The ship sailed to the front of the mirage-like cloud. In the cloud, a jade tower gradually appeared, and butterflies flew out of the jade tower. The seemingly illusory butterflies gradually turned corporeal. They flapped their wings and parted the clouds like a veil, causing the jade tower behind the clouds to become more and more real. The boat under the white-robed man's feet stopped, and he looked at the jade tower calmly. There were 2 words carved on the signboard of the jade tower that seemed to be untainted by the mortal world. Immortal Crossing. The white-robed man silently read the words on the signboard, and there was a strange look in his eyes. It seemed to be praise, but it also seemed to be a little different. Immortals and mortals are separated by a single thought. People only know how to seek immortal fate, but they don't know that immortal fate is already on the other side. It's just that people are foolish and don't know how to cross it. A woman's voice came from the Immortal Crossing Jade Tower. I am Wang Mingyuan, the Dragon King of the 8 tribes. I have been summoned to greet you. May I know which celestial sovereign of the celestial clan you are? Wang Mingyuan crossed his arms in front of his chest, and his long sleeves drooped down as he bowed slightly. The woman in the Immortal Crossing Jade Tower did not seem to hear him. She continued, Is Zhou Wen your disciple? Yes, Wang Mingyuan replied calmly. Where did he get his realm of the great all-embracing heaven? The woman asked again. Self-study. Wang Mingyuan was still as gentle as ever. Even in the celestial clan, it is rare for someone to comprehend the realm of the great all-embracing heaven. Do you think a mortal human can comprehend the realm of the great all-embracing heaven by himself? The woman's voice was cold. I never taught him. If he didn't comprehend it himself, I don't know how he learned it either, Wang Mingyuan said. If you can teach true celestial realm of the great all-embracing heaven, then my celestial clan will have to respect you as their master. The woman's voice became even colder. I wouldn't dare. Mingyuan bowed slightly, his eyes lowered, but his waist did not bend. Go. Bring Zhou Wen to the immortals. The woman's voice sounded again. May I ask the immortal reverend, why did he come to the immortal clan? Wang Mingyuan had no intention of leaving as he looked at the Immortal Crossing Jade Tower and asked, If I say I want to kill him, will you bring him here? The woman seemed to be born a cold person. Her voice had a kind of indifference that pushed people 1,000 miles away. I won't. But I know that the immortal reverend won't kill him. There's no need to go through so much trouble to kill him, Wang Mingyuan said. You know that I won't kill him, yet you still said that you won't. Do you think that I have a good temper and won't really kill you? Following the woman's voice, it was as if a boundless power surged out from the Immortal Crossing Jade Tower. Like invisible threads, they bound Wang Mingyuan's body. The clothes on Wang Mingyuan's body were immediately sliced apart by the invisible threads. The threads stuck close to his skin. There was even an invisible thread that had already wrapped around his neck. Just by coming into contact with his skin, it cut open his jade-like skin, causing drops of blood to seep out. It was as if, with a single thought from the woman, Wang Mingyuan's head would be separated from his body forever. I don't mean to offend you. I just want to let the immortal Reverend know that I am the master, and my disciple has to bear the consequences. Wang Mingyuan's expression was as calm as ever. That gentleness seemed to have seeped into his bones. Even if his head were to be chopped off, it would be difficult for him to become ferocious. The invisible threads retracted abruptly before suddenly dissipating. It was as if the mirage in the clouds had never existed. The path to immortality is gradually opening. The world is unstoppable. Thousands of races are vying for supremacy. My race also needs a holy son. Go, bring Zhou Wen to the celestial race. As long as he becomes our race's holy son, the matter of the perfect sword immortal and the berserk sword immortal will be written off. The immortal crossing Jade Tower gradually faded into the clouds, turning from corporeal to nothingness. Finally, it disappeared like an illusion. Only the woman's voice echoed above the sea of clouds. Wang Mingyuan. Farewell. Wang Mingyuan bowed slightly and turned to leave on the boat. He looked at the ethereal sea of clouds, and there seemed to be a smile in his eyes. Zhou Wen continued exploring the Star Palace and entered the 7th Star Palace. The 7th star of the Big Dipper was the Alcade, and its Star Lord was the Army Destroyer. It was said that he was a Star Lord with a strong murderous aura. Legend had it that he was like the 7 Murders Star, an existence with great destructive power. However, after meeting the military Star Lord, Zhou Wen still had great doubts about whether the Army Destroyer was a Star Lord with deep murderous intent. After teleporting into the Alcade dimensional zone, he immediately saw the Alcade Star Palace. The Star Palace looked surprisingly normal. A proper Star Palace stood in a sun-like halo. From Zhou Wen's location to the Alcade Star Palace, there was a long staircase that looked like a staircase that led to heaven. Zhou Wen stepped onto the staircase and walked towards the Alcade Star Palace, but he soon realized that his primordial energy was rapidly draining. Zhou Wen sped up and charged towards the door of the Alcade Star Palace. However, the faster he charged, the faster his primordial energy drained. Before he was halfway there, nearly half of his primordial energy had been drained. Zhou Wen frowned slightly and used spatial teleportation to arrive at the end of the staircase, in front of the Alcade Star Palace's door. However, the moment he teleported, he felt that the primordial energy in his body had become empty. There wasn't a single drop left. His legs went limp and he nearly fell to the ground. Thankfully, even without his primordial energy, Zhou Wen's physique was still rather strong. He forcefully stabilized himself and looked at the door of the Alcade Star Palace. He was somewhat surprised. As expected of the last star of the Big Dipper, my primordial energy has been crippled before I even entered the Star Palace. Zhou Wen was already attempting to recover his primordial energy. His primordial energy recovered very quickly, but here, as long as he had a sliver of primordial energy in his body, it would immediately drain out. He couldn't store it at all. Chapter 1627. After activating the teacher domain, the essence energy in his body immediately stopped draining. The essence energy that he recovered wouldn't be drained again. Soon, it returned to normal. Thankfully, it's only a taboo power. Zhou Wen pushed open the door to the Radiant Star Palace and saw resplendent starlight inside. The interior of the Radiant Star Palace was like a hemisphere. The spherical dome shone with resplendent starlight, like a miniature starry sky. In the miniature starry sky floated a blue-armored stellar lord. All the stars in the miniature starry sky seemed to revolve around him. Is that the Vanquisher Star Lord? Zhou Wen stared at the floating stellar lord and summoned the golden WRM blade to slash at stellar lord Vanquisher. Zhou Wen was just waiting to see how strong the last of the Big Dipper, Constellation Lord Destruction, was. To his surprise, Constellation Lord Destruction failed to block the golden flood dragon's blade. He was sliced into two and his body was split into two. Killed Calamity Creature, Stellar Lord Vanquisher. discovered dimensional crystal. It's over. Zhou was stunned for a while before he reacted. Stellar Lord Vanquisher had really died. Even when Zhou picked up the dimensional crystal on the ground, he still found it unbelievable that the last Big Dipper dungeon had ended just like that. Could it be that this isn't the last Star Palace of the Big Dipper dungeon? Could there be another Star Palace behind it? Zhou walked to the teleportation array, hoping to see if he could teleport to the other Star Palaces. In the end, he only had the choice of leaving the Star Palace. There were no other Star Palaces to teleport to. Although he couldn't accept it, it was the truth. Zhou had no choice but to teleport out of the dungeon. The Big Dipper dungeon had a total of 7 Star Palaces. They had all been cleared by Zhou, but the 7 Stellar Lords inside hadn't respawned. Zhou wanted to wait 24 hours to see if the 7 Stellar Lords would respawn. I wonder how long it will take for Tsukuyumi to completely absorb the Moon Essence Basin. Zhou looked at Tsukuyumi beside him. The moonlight there didn't show any signs of weakening. He stood up and moved around. He originally wanted to summon Liz and Lim to take a breather so that they could chat with him. However, on second thought, he dismissed this thought. This wasn't Earth. In such an environment, it was impossible to survive without strength at the mythical stage. Just as he was about to summon Banana Fairy and the other highly intelligent companion beasts, he suddenly heard a strange sound. Zhou's heart palpitated. Could it be another space creature? However, after listening carefully for a while, Zhou realized that the sound didn't come from the sky, but from beneath the nearby glacier. Dong dong! Dong dong! Zhou heard that the sound was like a heartbeat. It was very rhythmic and wasn't very loud, but he could hear it clearly. The sound came from the depths of a glacier rift. The rift was very deep, beyond Truth Listener's ability. He summoned the Golden WYRM Scissors, Soul Reflection Mirror, and the other Calamity-grade companion beasts and got them to guard Tsukuyumi. Zhou took Demonic Neonate and teleported towards the glacier rift. When they came to the side of the crack, the sound was even more obvious. They could only hear the deep and powerful thumping sounds coming from below, like the sound of a heavy subwoofer. Zhou carefully observed the glacier rift and realized that it was like a huge flat trumpet. The lower it went, the smaller the space. Furthermore, it was very deep. Truth Listener's hearing couldn't reach it, but it still couldn't find the source of the sound. It was likely further down. The structure of the glacier rift was like a flattened trumpet. As for what it looked like below, Zhou had no idea. After watching for a while, Zhou turned around and returned. Now, Tsukuyumi was still absorbing the power of the Moon Essence Basin and couldn't move. If there was really something terrifying down there, and it was lured out by Zhou, it would be extremely disadvantageous for Tsukuyumi. Therefore, Zhou decided to restrain his curiosity. It wouldn't be too late to explore after Tsukuyumi returned to normal. Now, Zhou was somewhat worried that the thing producing the sound from beneath the glacier rift would come out by itself. The banging sounds didn't stop. After Zhou returned to the ice cavern, he had been paying attention to the situation there. Although nothing rushed out of the glacier rift, the banging sounds left Zhou feeling very odd. I hope nothing happens before Tsukuyumi returns to normal. Zhou was puzzled inwardly. Logically speaking, it's impossible for Tsukuyumi to deliberately choose a dangerous place to stay in. Time ticked by. Although there was no abnormality at the glacier rift, Zhou didn't let down his guard. After an unknown period of time, Zhou suddenly heard that something was amiss. Previously, the sound from the other side was very rhythmic, just like a heartbeat. But now, the length of the sound was different, and the rhythm was clearly different. Zhou listened for a while longer and realized that the rhythm of the sound seemed to be the rhythm of a certain tune, not just a random beat. Furthermore, the tune seemed to be very hot-blooded and cheerful. The thumping sounds kept sounding, making it sound like a drum tune. Zhou frowned inwardly as he continued paying attention to the glacier rift. He was already prepared to react. However, nothing appeared on the other side. The rhythm of the sound kept changing, as if a drummer was constantly beating out different rhythms. Although Zhou found it odd and was somewhat curious about what was down there, he didn't dare take the risk to check. After a period of time, a high-pitched and sharp sound suddenly sounded, giving Zhou a fright. Previously, it had been a deep thumping sound, but now, the sound was like a trumpet that resounded through the clouds. Even if he didn't use Truth Listener, he could probably hear it clearly from any corner of the planet. Zhou's eardrums felt like they were about to be pierced by the sound. After this high-pitched sound, it returned to the previous deep thumping sound. The same sharp sound didn't appear again. Zhou focused on listening to the situation, but after the earth-shattering sound, there was no other abnormal movement. Only then did Zhou relax a little. He walked out of the ice cellar and planned on moving around. However, when he walked out of the ice cellar and raised his head to stretch his neck, he suddenly realized that there were space creatures outside the planet. Furthermore, there were more than one of them. At some point in time, there were already several different types of space creatures cruising outside the planet's atmosphere. All of them looked strange, like monsters circling a dining table. Apex. Chapter 1628. Zhou hurriedly hid in the ice cellar, afraid that the universe creatures would discover his whereabouts. Why are there so many universe creatures here? Are they here for Tsukuyami? Or is it related to the voice under the glacier? As Zhou secretly sized up the dimensional creatures, he thought to himself. There were already 5 universe creatures that Zhou could discover. One of them was wrapped in a huge electromagnetic storm, making it impossible to tell what it looked like. Occasionally, he could see strange snake-like tentacles extending out from the electromagnetic storm before quickly retracting. With just a glance, one could tell that the tentacle was thousands of meters long. There was also a colorful strange fish with a translucent veil-like tail. It circled the planet as though space had become a fish pond. There were also 2 wolf-like creatures, one black and one white, with a single horn. They stood in the asteroid belt near the planet and stared at the interior of the planet. The white one-horned wolf's eyes were black, while the black one-horned wolf's eyes were white. Their eyes emitted a demonic glow. There was also a dreamlike blue belt of light that circled the planet and flew at high speeds outside the atmosphere. It looked like a transparent blue belt of light, but it was unknown if it looked like this or if it had some special ability. Although he had only roughly observed them and couldn't scan them in detail due to the distance, he could tell that they were calamity-grade creatures. From the looks of it, they aren't here for Tsukuyami, Zhou thought to himself. If they were here for Tsukuyami, they should have rushed in like the void-true salamander and eaten Tsukuyami while she was immobile. However, the universe creatures were only cruising around the planet's periphery. None of them entered the atmosphere as though they were afraid of something. Were they attracted by the sound under the glacier crack? What's there? Could it be that this planet's companion beast is about to be born? If it's the birth of a planet companion beast, there should be a corresponding dimensional zone. Zhou sized up the glacier crack again. If it was really the birth of a planet companion beast, it was probably the entrance to the dimensional zone. However, what Zhou couldn't understand was what the universe creatures were afraid of. Why hadn't they entered the atmosphere? Even if it was the birth of a planet companion beast, there wouldn't be any danger as long as they didn't enter a dimensional zone. It didn't seem to be the reason why they didn't land. Tsukuyami, hurry up! Zhou turned to look at Tsukuyami and saw that she was still motionless. The moonlight on her body didn't weaken at all. He couldn't help but feel depressed. Something big must have happened here. Even if they weren't here for Tsukuyami, how could they let go of the delicacy once they discovered an immobile calamity creature like Tsukuyami? One had to know that calamity creatures basically ate calamity creatures to replenish their energy. Thankfully, the space creatures hadn't charged into the planet for the time being. There was still some time as a buffer, but this was what Zhou was worried about. Something that could make so many space creatures afraid was probably not a good thing. Now that they were on this planet, the situation might be even worse than when those space creatures rushed over. The sound from the cracks in the glacier was still ringing. Between the deep thumping sounds, there would occasionally be a sharp sound like that of a swona. Every time that sharp sound rang out, there would be some space lifeforms appearing outside the planet. The first 5 space lifeforms that appeared each occupied a certain area. Many space lifeforms that appeared later were swallowed or killed by the 5 space lifeforms once they got close to their area. Most of the space creatures that appeared later were at the terrorgrade. They were very afraid of the 5 space creatures that appeared first, but they couldn't bear to leave. They watched from further away in the cosmos. Something big is going to happen. Looking at the space creatures that resembled demons and ghosts on the periphery of the planet, Zhou felt that something was amiss. Zhou was already considering if there was any way to safely move Tsukuyami out. Do. Just as Zhou was thinking of a solution, he heard a faint sound coming from beside the ice cellar. The location of the icehouse was also under a glacier crack, but it was not the same glacier crack that had caused the sound. It was thousands of miles away. At that moment, a sound came from beneath the glacier beside the ice cellar, giving Zhou a fright. Zhou immediately raised Truth Listener's ability to its limits and swept it down the glacier fault. The glacier fault here wasn't considered deep. From where the ice cellar was, it only extended 3,000 to 4,000 meters. Previously, Zhou had used Truth Listener to scan it. There was a thick glacier at the bottom and nothing else. At that moment, a beeping sound came from below. It alarmed Zhou as he scanned again and realized that at the bottom of the fault, a pool the size of a well had melted at some point in time. The beeping sound came from the tiny bubbles that rose from the bottom of the pool. One by one, small bubbles slowly rose from the bottom of the water and then slowly burst. Zhou stared at the tiny bubbles and used Truth Listener's ability to follow the bubbles deep into the pool. With the appearance of tiny bubbles, it was very likely that there were creatures below. Zhou had to figure out what was down there. They were so close to the ice cellar. Once the thing inside came out, they would definitely be the first to bear the brunt. The pool was also strange. The bottom was the same as the top. Only a space the size of the well had melted. Beyond that was hard ice without any signs of melting. Thankfully, the pool wasn't as deep as Zhou imagined. After a few hundred meters, Zhou finally saw the bottom of the pool. It was still a glacier, but there was a strange plant growing there. The plant was extremely strange. Its leaves were like round mushroom cap. Each leaf was the size of a palm and translucent blue. Layers of leaves rose up, and at the top, there was a fruit that looked like a peach. It was the size of a fist, and from time to time, tiny bubbles would surface from it. The tiny bubbles that rose to the surface came from this peach-like fruit. Zhou sensed a powerful vitality from the strange underwater plant, but it was only vitality. It wasn't accompanied by intense essence energy fluctuations. What is this? A native plant of this planet? Zhou was puzzled. After scanning for a while, he didn't discover anything special about the plant. Suddenly, the sharp sound that sounded like a trumpet sounded from the distant glacier crack. Chapter 1629. Zhou was already used to the sharp sound, so he didn't find it strange. However, when he heard the sound, he suddenly widened his eyes. Zhou seemed to be in disbelief as he tried his best to widen his eyes, as though he wanted to see something clearly. In fact, there was no need for him to do so. This was because he couldn't see what he wanted to see with his eyes. He needed to use Truth Listener to listen to the scene in his mind. It was only because he was too surprised that he had an unconscious reaction. What Zhou wanted to see were the tiny bubbles produced by the plant in the water. In the beginning, Zhou didn't pay much attention to the bubbles. He was only paying attention to the plant itself. However, when the sharp sound sounded, Zhou discovered something strange. Before the sharp sound sounded, A bubble that was different from ordinary bubbles rose from the peach-like fruit. Although the size of the bubble was no different from an ordinary bubble, the color of the bubble was a little different. It was slightly pale blue. The color wasn't deep, but it was still distinguishable from ordinary bubbles. The timing of the bubble's appearance was just before the shrill sound. This timing was too coincidental. Zhouwen didn't pay much attention to it in the beginning, but because of this, he unconsciously began to pay attention to the ordinary bubbles. Then, he was surprised to discover that, every time an ordinary bubble appeared, there would be a low thumping sound coming from the other side. The bubbles that appeared on the fruit matched the sound emitted by the glacier crack. Furthermore, the bubbles appeared first before the sound came from beneath the glacier crack. What's going on? Could it be that the sounds down there were influenced by this plant? Zhouwen scanned the plant again and again in surprise, but he didn't discover any relationship between the plant and the glacier crack. It was rooted in the ice, and the roots below could be seen clearly. It was completely in the glacier, and there was no other connection to the outside world. There were no gaps under the ice. It was impossible for such a tiny plant to be connected to the glacier crack thousands of kilometers away and cause such a loud sound. However, Zhouwen observed for a long time. Before the sharp sound sounded from the glacier crack again, a unique blue bubble appeared on the fruit. There's no mistake. The glacier crack definitely has something to do with this plant, but what is it? Zhouwen was puzzled. More and more universe lifeforms were attracted by the sound. In the sacred land, the saint god was also observing the planet covered in glaciers through a mirror. Lord Saint God. Shao and 9 sons walked in together and bowed to the saint god. Come and take a look, the Xing deity said as she looked at the mirror. Is this planet's companion beast about to appear? 9 Yang said after taking a look. A planetary companion beast is about to appear. The saint god paused for a moment before continuing. However, this planet is a little different. It probably won't be easy for its companion beasts to appear. What happened on this planet? Shao asked. The saint deity pondered for a moment and said, the companion beasts of this planet are actually no longer the original companion beasts. It's not the original companion beast? Can the companion beasts produced by the planet itself be replaced? 9 Yang was somewhat puzzled. The saint god said indifferently, there's a type of bee on Earth that will lay its eggs in the bodies of other larvae. The eggs will absorb the nutrients of the larvae and grow until they finally break out. That's too cruel. 9 Yang sighed. Cruel? Perhaps you should know that there's a bird on Earth called the cuckoo. It will secretly plant its eggs in other birds' nests and let the other birds help it hatch them. When the cuckoo breaks out of its shell, it will push the other eggs out of the nest and smash them, allowing it to enjoy all the food, the saint god added. 9 Yang's scalp tingled. In comparison, the cuckoo was even more ruthless. It had killed the other party's son and wanted the other party to raise it. In other words, that planet's original companion beast has been parasitized. Who has the ability to parasitize a planet? Shao asked after some thought. Another companion beast. A companion beast that appeared prematurely because the planet accidentally shattered. It had no choice but to parasitize it. The saint god paused for a moment before saying, in the mythical era, during the Battle of the Gods, a planet was accidentally shattered. Back then, many experts present wanted to snatch the companion beast that appeared prematurely, but no one succeeded in the end. It escaped into this planet. If those experts can shatter a planet, can't they shatter this planet as well? 9 Yang asked. I've already said that it was an accident. How can a planet protected by the laws of the universe be destroyed so easily? The saint god pondered for a moment before continuing. Before the companion beast escaped into the planet, it accidentally swallowed something that didn't belong to it. After you go, it's naturally for the best if you can bring back the companion beast from that planet. If you can't, kill it and take back the item inside its body. Yes. Shao and 9 Yang responded to the order. Just as they were about to leave, they were stopped by the Saint God. Many terrifying existences in the dimension know of this matter. They will definitely think of a way to vie for it. Your mission won't be that easy. The Saint God took out 2 items and gave them to Xiao and Ninyang respectively. The holy artifact can raise your strength to the heaven realm, but it's ultimately not the true heaven realm. You have to truly fuse with the holy artifact to advance to the heaven realm. This can help you. Fuse with the holy artifact? That's not good, right? Ninyang and Xiao were taken aback. The holy artifact belonged to the temple. They were only in charge, so how could they casually fuse with it? No matter how good the holy artifact is, it's only useful if it can be kept. Don't worry. I've already discussed it with the Trajectory Holy Temple and the Sun Holy Temple. You have already been allowed to fuse with the holy artifact. Only by doing so can you truly fight Zhou. Thank you, Your Excellency. Ninyang and Xiao hurriedly bowed. Remember, no matter how strong your strength is, you still have to use it. Whether you can defeat Zhou depends on your own abilities, said the Saint God. We definitely won't disappoint you. Go. You don't have much time left. After the fusion is successful, head to that planet. Seeing the 2 of them leave, the corners of the Saint God's mouth curled into a sneer as she muttered to herself, "How can the holy artifact be fused so easily? Even if you die, the holy artifact will still exist." Chapter 1630. The space creatures outside the planet didn't rush into the atmosphere. Zhou kept observing the strange plant. The rhythm formed by the bubbles sounded very pleasant. It wasn't as exaggerated as the sound produced by the cracks in the glacier, but it was abnormally moving. Since Zhou had nothing to do, he suddenly had an idea. He summoned the musical note sprite and used it to replicate the bubble's music. Although he didn't know music, the musical note sprite had musical talent and abilities. Coupled with Zhou's good memory, a musical note sprite simulated the sound of a bubble and quickly produced a continuous bubble music. The bubbles kept rising. Zhou had enough musical note sprites. They were replicated one by one, and the music produced surprised Zhou himself. The music was extremely infectious. As Zhou listened, tears welled up in the corners of his eyes. Zhou was very slow when it came to emotions. He wasn't an emotional person. When he listened to ordinary music, even if others were moved to tears, he wouldn't feel anything. However, the virtual bubble music made him feel intense sadness. It was a music that was close to despair and silence. There was a repressed anger, as though it was a roar before death, or a funeral song before death harvested life. Without the augmentation of essence energy, just the music itself had such infectious power. It surprised Zhou. This infectious power was something no power could stop. Even the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder couldn't seal this soul-deep shock. After listening for a while, Zhou actually had the thought of committing suicide. Thankfully, his willpower was extremely firm. He immediately became alert and forcefully suppressed the thought. What amazing music! Zhou frowned slightly, but he still got the musical note sprite to continue simulating the music and recording it. 24 hours had passed. The Big Dipper dungeon had indeed refreshed. Zhou entered the dungeon and killed the Star Lords one by one. The first 6 Star Lords didn't drop companion eggs. When it came to the 7th Star Lord, Zhou deliberately didn't use the teacher domain and entered Mizar Star Palace after expending all his essence energy. As he didn't use the teacher domain, Zhou immediately felt something different after entering Mizar Star Palace. The stars in the compressed cosmos shimmered with a demonic glow. He summoned the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors to attack Star Lord Army Destroyer. However, just as the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors flew up, starlight fell from the sky. In an instant, the entire Star Palace was covered in starlight. The golden WRM scissors were struck down, and the blood-colored avatar was killed amidst the starlight. The phone screen turned black. I see. Previously, Shiryu enveloped the Star Palace, sealing the powers of those stars. That's why Starlord Vanquisher looks so weak. Zhou immediately understood. The average person would have expended all their primordial energy before entering the Mizar Star Palace. Although summoning a companion beast doesn't require too much primordial energy, it still requires a bit of primordial energy to support it. When the time comes, I'm afraid I won't even be able to summon a single companion beast. Without being able to use primordial energy arts, even a Heaven Realm expert would be doomed against such a terrifying starlight. Unless his body can withstand the starlight that fills the sky, or he can think of a way to resolve the problem of essence energy, he can only use powers like Shiryu to kill Stellar Lord Vanquisher. Zhou immediately realized that the Mizar Star Palace was indeed terrifying. Thankfully, Shiryu could perfectly restrain Stellar Lord Vanquisher. It was too easy for Zhou to kill him. However, Zhou still wanted to give it a try. Without using Shiryu, he wanted to see if there was any other way to kill Stellar Lord Vanquisher. After trying a few times, the outcome wasn't ideal. Without primordial energy, he couldn't use any primordial energy art. He couldn't even use the Chaos Egg to withstand it. Apart from the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, no other primordial energy art could ignore this taboo. If I can improve the dragon imprisonment armor further and rely on its absolute defense, I might be able to withstand the attacks of the starlight. Unfortunately, Zhou had always wanted to raise the dragon imprisonment armor to the calamity grade, but he hadn't found a good method. When Zhou attempted to kill Stellar Lord Vanquisher, the musical note sprites continued following his orders and constantly simulated the bubble music. After simulating countless notes, the bubble music finally began to repeat. However, every time it repeated, the rhythm of the music became much faster, and the appeal it produced became stronger. The sense of despair and silence would probably make an ordinary person immediately have thoughts of committing suicide. After listening to it so many times, Zhou was already familiar with it. Even without the need for the musical note sprites to simulate it, he could hum the tune himself. However, Zhou didn't have any musical talent. He could only hum the tune correctly, and the appeal was much weaker. In the end, he couldn't think of any other way to kill Stellar Lord Vanquisher. He used Shiryu to kill Stellar Lord Vanquisher to prevent it from affecting the respawn time of the other Stellar Lords. The respawn time of the Big Dipper dungeon was based on the time of Stellar Lord Vanquisher's death. It respawned once every 24 hours. If Vanquisher didn't die, the other Stellar Lords wouldn't respawn. After putting away his phone, Zhou scanned the plant below and was surprised to discover that the plant's leaves were withering. The lowest leaf had already shriveled like a withered leaf. Soon, it fell from the stem and turned to dust in the water. The leaf at the top also began to wither. Worried that something bad would happen, Zhou unsummoned the musical note sprites, but a strange scene happened. After the musical note sprites were unsummoned, the speed at which the leaves withered clearly slowed down. Could it be? Zhou summoned the musical note sprites again, and made them play the virtual bubble music again. Indeed, the speed at which the leaves withered increased. How strange! The speed at which the leaves withered is actually affected by the music? Zhou didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing for the leaves to wither faster. After some thought, Zhou unsummoned the musical note sprites. To Zhou, the best situation was that nothing happened. From this angle, it was naturally a good thing that the leaves withered slowly. Without the musical note sprites' music, the speed at which the leaves withered was indeed much slower. Zhou estimated that it would take another 50 to 60 hours for all the leaves to wither. I hoped Tsukuyami can wake up before the leaves completely wither. Zhou had a hunch that something big would happen when all the leaves withered and fell. Time ticked by. Even when the last leaf withered and fell, Tsukuyami still didn't wake up. Zhou's eyes were glued to the remaining fruit at the top of the plant. Chapter 1631. Zhou heart was in his throat as he activated all sorts of domains. At the same time, he summoned his companion beast. If anything really happened, he could deal with it. The last leaf had already fallen, leaving behind the peach-like fruit that was held high by the curved stem. It swayed slightly with the water, ripples and bubbles would rise from time to time. Crack! A crisp sound came from the fruit, and a crack appeared on the fruit. Then, the fruit split open along the crack. Zhou scanned it with rapt attention, hoping to see what was inside the cracked fruit. However, he realized that the cracks were only on the outer layer. Furthermore, it was split into 3 petals that slowly hung down. Crack! 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 The fruit split apart layer by layer like a blooming flower. When the last layer split apart, he finally saw a hemispherical space in the middle of the fruit. A figure was inside. The figure looked like a bee and was about the size of a finger. Its entire body was pitch black like black jade. Strangely, the bee's front claw was holding a tiny black trumpet-shaped object. No matter how Zhou looked at it, it looked like a mini trumpet. At that moment, the bee's front claw was holding the mini trumpet. Its body was slightly hunched as it hid in the space inside the fruit. Bubbles rose from the mini trumpet. The bubbles that had floated out of the fruit had likely come from it. Could this fellow be a companion beast of this planet? Zhou thought. As the fruit cracked, more and more bubbles floated out of the trumpet, causing the rhythm of the music to speed up. The sound from the glacier crack became louder and louder. The terrifying sound caused the glacier on the planet to begin collapsing. Huge cracks appeared on the planet as the entire planet seemed to tremble. Zhou hurriedly got his companion beast to separate the ice cellar from the glacier outside. Tyrant Behemoth lifted the entire ice cellar to prevent Tsukuyomi from being affected by the tremors. The atmosphere also produced visible ripples due to the tremors of the sound, as though it was about to shatter. Zhou kept observing the bee that was blowing the trumpet and saw that it was still sleeping. It didn't fly out of the space inside the fruit. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the atmosphere. Zhou turned his attention and realized that there were finally space creatures that couldn't help but charge into the atmosphere. Under the high-speed impact, their bodies rubbed against the atmosphere, producing flames. However, it wasn't just one cosmic lifeform that entered the atmosphere. Groups of cosmic lifeforms roared as they charged into the atmosphere from the starry sky. They were like meteorites wrapped in flames as they charged into the interior of the planet. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come. All of them rushed in the moment they arrived. Zhou observed for a while and suddenly felt that something was amiss. There seemed to be something wrong with the cosmic lifeforms that had rushed into the atmosphere. Rumble! A space creature directly collided with the planet, triggering an effect similar to an atomic bomb explosion. The shock wave rolled up rocks and glaciers, spreading out in a ring-shaped state. Everywhere it passed, everything was destroyed. Zhou clearly sensed that all the bones in the space creature's body had fractured. Its body was distorted from the impact as blood spewed out from the wounds and splattered with the shockwave. This isn't rushing into a planet to snatch something, but seeking death. Zhou watched as the space creatures slammed into the planet in a suicidal manner. The entire planet was filled with terrifying collisions and explosions. Moments later, the huge planet was riddled with holes from the impact. It was difficult to find an intact area. It was as though it had been bombarded by thousands of atomic bombs. Many space creatures died from the collision on the planet. Most of those who didn't die were heavily injured. They struggled in the craters and began tearing at their bodies as they crazily mutilated themselves. Zhou had already realized that the creatures that rushed in were all Terra-grade creatures. The 5 Calamity-grade creatures that had occupied the starry sky near the planet didn't rush in. From the looks of it, these Terra creatures should have been affected by the bubble music and rushed in to commit suicide. Zhou looked at the planet that was riddled with holes and the corpses of space creatures everywhere. He felt a chill run down his spine as he couldn't help but size up the black bee again. This fellow hasn't even woken up, but it already has such a terrifying influence. How terrifying will it be when it wakes up? A scene couldn't help but surface in Zhou Wen's mind. A black bee blew into a trumpet that resembled a swana. This should have been a very cute scene, but the background was a sea of corpses and blood. Countless living beings committed suicide. Corpses were strewn everywhere as blood flowed like rivers. It was a scene of hell everywhere. Should we think of a way to kill it before it wakes up? Zhou Wen already had such a thought. Once such a terrifying creature appeared, it would probably be no different from the apocalypse. As he thought about it, Zhou Wen realized that something was amiss. After a round of suicidal attacks from the space creatures, the glacier crack no longer emitted any sound. However, the trumpet in the bee's claws was still emitting bubbles. Could it be that all of this wasn't caused by the bee and the trumpet? Zhou Wen was slightly taken aback as he paid attention for a while. Indeed, there was no sound from the glacier crack. The bee's trumpet continued blowing bubbles as usual without any changes. This made Zhou Wen have new questions. In the cosmos, the space creatures rushed into the planet's interior once again. The 5 calamity creatures rushed in from different directions. This time, they weren't suicidal. They were all heading for the glacier crack. However, they only arrived near the glacier crack and didn't rush in directly. They each occupied a spot near the glacier crack as though they were guarding against each other. Soon, Zhou Wen swept his gaze across 2 figures that had rushed into the atmosphere. They were Xiao and Nine Yang. Why are they here? Zhou Wen was slightly taken aback. The universe was vast and there were many planets. Although the commotion here was huge, it was negligible in the universe. This place was extremely far from Earth. Unless one had the ability to teleport, even a calamity grade would take many years to rush here from Earth. It was definitely not a coincidence that Xiao and Nine Yang appeared here at this moment. The Holy Land can't be so powerful. They should know which planet's companion beast has appeared in the universe, right? Zhou Wen was alarmed and puzzled. Thankfully, I came in time. That companion beast hasn't appeared yet. Zhou Wen couldn't help but listen when he heard Nine Yang speak in the sky. Chapter 1632. 5 Calamity-Grade Dimensional Creatures. I wonder how strong they are, Xiao said as he observed the 5 cosmic creatures. No matter how strong they are, we have to bring that companion beast back. Nine Yang stared at the glacier rift and said, Lord Holy God said that companion beast is different from ordinary companion beasts. It won't appear in a normal manner. It might not have a corresponding dimensional zone and will likely rush out directly. When the time comes, I'll deal with it. Try your best to help me hold back those dimensional creatures. I don't have the confidence to fight 5 alone, Xiao said with a bitter expression. We can exchange. You deal with that companion beast, Nine Yang said indifferently. Xiao pondered for a moment before shaking his head. There's no need. I'll try my best to hold them back. The 2 of them discussed some details. As they didn't expect humans to appear here, they didn't hide their conversation. They couldn't be blamed. This place was so far from Earth that humans couldn't reach it even if they spent their entire lives. Furthermore, how could there be humans in the vast universe who coincidentally came to such a place? When Zhou Wen heard their conversation, he roughly knew that it wasn't a coincidence that they had come here. The Holy God seemed to know the companion beasts on this planet very well. However, up to now, Zhou Wen hadn't heard much useful information. He only knew that there seemed to be something wrong with the companion beasts on this planet. They would rush out directly, but he didn't hear Nine Yang or Xiao mention what the problem was. Just as Xiao and Nine Yang were discussing the details, they suddenly heard a loud bang. They hurriedly turned their heads and saw the blue ribbon-like cosmic creature rush into the glacier rift. As if it was contagious, when it moved, the other space creatures also moved. One by one, they rushed into the glacier crack and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Nine Yang and Xiao were taken aback. They hadn't expected such a situation when they came. The holy god only said that it was very difficult for this companion beast to appear, but she didn't say that they could rush in. The two of them looked at each other before Xiao said, "Why don't we go in and take a look?" "All right." Jiu Yang nodded slightly, and the two of them headed towards the crack in the glacier, disappearing in a short while. Zhou was a little tempted when he saw them enter the glacier rift, but he ultimately held back. He didn't know when Tsukuyumi would recover, so he definitely couldn't take the risk. "Should I take her away from here?" Zhou looked at Tsukuyumi, who was still absorbing the moon essence, and was already considering leaving the planet. He hadn't left previously because Tsukuyumi couldn't move, nor could he store her in the chaos space. It was also impossible for him to teleport such a huge east ice cellar. If he brought her into space, it would be too dangerous if she encountered terrifying space creatures. However, this place was even more dangerous than the cosmos. Furthermore, most of the universe creatures surrounding the planet. From the looks of the current situation, the dimensional creatures in the nearby cosmos had probably been attracted. It wasn't easy to encounter a cosmic creature nearby, so there shouldn't be any danger. They would find a nearby planet to settle down and wait for the moon readings to return to normal. Before Zhou could lift the ice cellar, he heard a sound coming from the atmosphere again. Zhou hurriedly stopped and used Truth Listener to scan the direction of the sound. Before Zhou could lift the ice cellar, he heard a voice coming from the atmosphere. Zhou hurriedly stopped and used Truth Listener to scan the direction of the voice. Furthermore, the direction in which the fat man rushed in was where Zhou and Tsukuyumi were. Zhou carefully sized up the strange person. His robe looked golden, but in fact, it wasn't completely golden. It should have been black, but because there were too many golden coins embroidered on it with golden threads, the golden coins were stacked on top of each other and even overlap. There was very little of the color that was revealed, so it looked like he was wearing a golden robe that covered his plump figure. His face was very fat, narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. His cheeks were like two meatballs, and he had standard dead fish eyes. Is this a human? Zhou felt that the fatty's aura was strange. He didn't seem human. Seeing that the fatty was about to reach them, Zhou's heart skipped a beat when he saw that he was still heading straight for them instead of heading for the glacier rift. Could this be the Toad Fairy? With this thought in mind, Zhou sensed that his aura was indeed a little similar to that toad's, but it was also somewhat different. "Hand over the moon essence basin and I'll let you die a quick death." The golden-robed fatty came above the ice hole where Zhou was and shouted with a hoarse voice. His throat seemed to have been sanded by sandpaper. His voice sounded very unpleasant, like the sound of fingernails scratching a metal surface. It made one's teeth ache. It's indeed him. Why has this fellow taken human form? It really came at the wrong time. Zhou's thoughts raced as he considered how to deal with the current situation. Swan Immortal was with him, and the Moon Essence Basin was with Tsukuyumi. With these two items, no matter where they went, Toad Immortal would be able to find them. Furthermore, Zhou didn't know which item Toad Immortal valued more. If Toad Immortal valued the Moon Essence Basin more, it would be impossible for him to lure Toad Immortal away. From the looks of it, I can only block him head-on. Seeing that Toad Immortal seemed to have the intention of charging down, Zhou didn't hesitate any longer. He used teleportation and appeared outside the ice hole to face Toad Immortal. "You finally dare to come out. You killed my body and snatched my Moon Essence Basin. Even if you die 10,000 times, it won't be a pity." Toad Immortal stared at Zhou with his dead fish eyes as his golden pupils shimmered with killing intent. Without giving Zhou a chance to speak, Toad Immortal's cheeks puffed up like two balloons. It made one worry that they would explode at any moment. However, in the end, his cheeks were as big as a fitness ball. They didn't explode. Then, he opened his mouth and spat at Zhou. Instantly, a terrifying storm formed. Everything in front of the storm was swept up by the storm. Banana Fairy was the best choice to deal with wind elemental powers, but unfortunately, her level was a little low. No matter how strong her restraints against wind elemental powers were, she couldn't fight across such a huge difference in level. After all, Toad Immortal was in existence at the Heaven Realm. The storm was just too powerful. Under the high-speed airflow, everything was torn apart. Furthermore, it enveloped a large area with almost no end in sight. With a thought, Zhou Wen's sword domain appeared out of thin air. Countless sword pills appeared around him as he faced the terrifying storm. Chapter 1633. The sword domain's sword pill grew endlessly, but in the storm, it was quickly blown to the inside. A large number of sword pills vanished, unable to stop the storm's attack. A Heaven Realm wind. So powerful, Zhou Wen couldn't retreat. At the very least, he couldn't let the battle affect Tsukuyami in the glacier below. The Dragon King armor appeared as the powers of the 8 companion beasts augmented Zhou Wen, causing his strength to increase tremendously. His sword domain appeared once again. The sword pill that resembled a galaxy reappeared in the storm and charged at it. With the augmentation of the 8 companion beasts, Zhou Wen's strength was still inferior to Toad Immortal's, but the effects of the sword pill particles were revealed. After the sword pill in front disappeared from the wind, it quickly turned from the yin side to the yang side and appeared again. The endless sword pill constantly attacked the storm. Even though the storm was stronger than the sword domain, as long as it couldn't destroy the sword domain in one go, it would be blocked by the constantly regenerating sword pill. The sword pill particles could constantly be regenerated, but the storm couldn't. After a period of time, the power of the storm weakened, and the sword domain's power gained the upper hand. Toad Immortal looked at Zhou Wen in surprise. He clearly sensed that Zhou Wen's strength was only at the mortal stage, but he had suddenly risen to a level that was infinitely close to the heaven stage. This leap was somewhat exaggerated. Furthermore, the characteristics of the sword domain surprised him. It was almost an immortal power. Even among those at the heaven stage, it was rare. The torrent formed by the sword pill tore through the storm and charged at Toad Immortal like a galaxy. Toad Immortal sneered and opened his mouth again. However, this time, he wasn't exhaling, but sucking. He opened his mouth, and countless sword pill particles flew into his mouth uncontrollably. The mouth didn't look big, but it seemed to be able to devour the world. After the sword pill particles were sucked in, they immediately lost contact with Zhou Wen. This fellow still has the ability to devour void? It's much stronger than the toad's body from before. Seeing that it was useless no matter how many sword pill particles there were, Zhou Wen had no choice but to stop attacking. A mere human dares compete with me? Toad Immortal said contemptuously as a golden light flashed in his mouth. Zhou Wen didn't see what it was, but he immediately summoned the Chaos Egg. Puff! The Chaos Egg was sent flying by something. A large number of solid essence energy crystals appeared in it. Many essence energy crystals that were compressed to the limit appeared. He didn't die. The Toad Fairy was slightly stunned. The next second, the golden light flashed again in its mouth. Zhou Wen still couldn't see what it was. He condensed a sword domain to protect himself, but the sword pill particles were suddenly pulled away. A force tore through the sword domain and struck the Chaos Egg, sending it flying again. Pa-pa! Pa-pa! The golden light flashed as it lashed at the Chaos Egg from different directions, sending it flying. The golden light was so fast that all Zhou Wen could see was a flash. He had no time to block it as he was sent staggering from side to side. He couldn't even react in time. Thankfully, the Chaos Egg was powerful enough to block the golden light's continuous attacks and not shatter. This Toad Immortal seems to be stronger than the Void Real Salamander. Zhou Wen thought about how he could defeat him. At the very least, he had to stall for enough time. He hoped that the Toad Immortal would continue lashing out like this. That way, he could accumulate a large number of high-level solid crystals and transfer them to Tyrant Behemoth and the other gluttonous companion beast. Unfortunately, the Toad Immortal didn't give him such a chance. After a few consecutive strikes, he realized that he couldn't shatter the Chaos Egg. The golden light actually revealed itself and wrapped around the Chaos Egg. It was a golden tongue that extended out from the Toad Immortal's mouth. After wrapping around the Chaos Egg, it suddenly retracted and instantly pulled the Chaos Egg into its mouth. Thankfully, Zhou reaction wasn't slow. Just as he was about to be swallowed, he used teleportation to rush out. You even know spatial teleportation. Let's see how fast you can teleport. The Toad Immortal snorted coldly as it flicked its golden tongue again, transforming into a golden beam of light that flashed. Zhou had no choice but to use the Chaos Egg to block the golden tongue's attack. At the same time, he opened his teacher domain. The golden tongue wrapped around the Chaos Egg once again. As it pulled it into its mouth, it also used the power of the void devouring force to restrain Zhou, preventing him from using spatial teleportation to escape. However, when it was sucking, it suddenly realized that the power of the void devouring force had become much weaker. It failed to suck Zhou in as he once again used spatial teleportation to escape. After escaping again, Zhou put away the Chaos Egg and used Transcendent Flying Immortal, raising his speed to its limits as he drew elegant arcs in the air. The Toad Immortal's tongue attacked several times, but it failed to touch Zhou. The teacher domain allowed Zhou to know the trajectory of the tongue's attack. The speed of Transcendent Flying Immortal gave him the possibility of dodging. The Toad Immortal was somewhat surprised. Its void devouring and storm powers had clearly been weakened. Taboo powers? The Toad Immortal rolled its eyes and sized up Zhou with a frown. Zhou had almost taken out all the assets he could. Apart from the immortal culling sword that he hadn't used, he didn't have any other means. He only hoped that he could last a little longer. During the battle, Zhou consciously led the battlefield to the cosmos, but he couldn't be too obvious. He didn't want the Toad Immortal to see through him and charge straight for Tsukuyomi. You still have a choice to play with taboo powers in front of me. As though it had confirmed what power Zhou was using, the Toad Immortal snorted coldly. Its body trembled as thousands of golden light shot out from its body. The golden light transformed into golden square coins that flew in different directions. They were like nails that were nailed into the void, turning the area into a money space. Zhou immediately felt the essence energy in his body rapidly vanish. He was unable to maintain the power of the sword domain and the Chaos Egg. Only the teacher domain could barely maintain it. The teacher domain has met its match. Zhou immediately realized the problem. The Toad Immortal actually had a power similar to the teacher domain. Furthermore, the other party's strength had already reached the level of a perfect domain. Shiryu was ultimately only at the human stage. Due to the power of the 8 companion beasts, Shiryu's strength was very close to the Heaven Realm. However, it was only close. Compared to the true Heaven Realm, it was still much weaker. Now, even using spatial teleportation became very difficult for Zhou. I never expected to encounter a human who can use taboo powers. However, I'm an ancestor who plays with taboo powers. You are still far from it, the Toad Immortal said with a sneer. Chapter 1634. If it were any ordinary person, they probably wouldn't even be able to use companion beasts in Toad Immortal's money domain. However, Zhou was still able to maintain a portion of his abilities and the ability to use his companion beast. He was still able to maintain the connection between the Demon Dragon King armor and the 8 companion beasts. This was all thanks to Shiryu. Although the Shur domain was not as powerful as the money domain, it was not completely suppressed, and even had a certain effect on the Toad Immortal. They were both at Heaven Realm, but the Void True Salamander was only proficient in the power of Void Lightning, while the Toad Celestial's power was more diverse and more difficult to deal with. As for Nine Yang and Xiao, they were about the same as Zhou. They were at the Pseudo-Heaven Realm. compared to the true heaven realm, they were still a distance away. The Toad Immortal's tongue swept over like lightning as Zhou Wen used the transcendent flying immortal he had comprehended. His figure fluttered as he dodged the Toad Immortal's tongue attacks again and again. He could even use some opportunities to launch a counterattack. However, Immortal Toad was far more powerful than the trio from before. Not only was it powerful, but its combat skills had also reached the pinnacle. Even transcendent flying immortal couldn't suppress it when it had the upper hand. True celestial realm of the great all-embracing heaven. Toad Immortal recognized the concept of transcendent flying immortal at a glance and seemed very surprised. His pair of strange eyes looked at Zhou Wen in bewilderment and thought to himself, "What is going on with this human? Not only is he proficient in forbidden power, but he's also at the great all-embracing heaven true celestial realm, which is one of the highest realms of the celestial clan. Is he really a human? Could it be that the leaders of the immortals have possessed me and descended here to deliberately make things difficult for me?" But after watching for a while, Toad Immortal dispelled this idea. Zhou Wen's realm of the great all-embracing heaven true immortal was just at the beginning. If a real celestial clan big shot had descended, it should be more than this level. I can't believe a human could reach such a level and comprehend the realm of the great all-embracing heaven at such a level. If it wasn't for the mastermind of the Immortal Clan, this would be too unreal. The more Toad Immortal thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. He suspected that Zhou Wen was being schemed against by some big shot. Back then, he had been tricked by the Queen Mother of the West. As the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. The more Immortal Toad thought about it, the more he felt that there was something fishy going on. With this in mind, Toad Immortal hesitated. He didn't dare attack Zhou Wen with all his might. He held back and observed in secret, hoping to find some clues. The Toad Immortal's reputation was not good. The legend of a toad wanting to eat swan meat had ruined his reputation. But in terms of strength, the Toad Immortal's strength was definitely not as weak as the rumors said. Otherwise, he would have died a long time ago at the Queen Mother's place. How could it be as simple as being knocked into a mortal's womb after teasing a swan fairy in that kind of place? Moreover, he even brought out the moon essence basin, a true treasure of the moon. Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled. He could clearly sense that the pressure Toad Immortal gave him had decreased significantly. Although the Toad Immortal still had the advantage, it didn't make Zhou Wen feel the pressure of impending death. Zhou Wen didn't know what Toad Immortal was thinking or what he was plotting, but this was a good thing for him. Although Shiryu was far inferior to Toad Immortal's money domain, Shiryu wasn't just a taboo domain. The true strength of Shiryu lay in the word master. At that moment, Shiryu was constantly accumulating the trajectories of the money domain. It was as though he was completing a jigsaw puzzle, gradually piecing together the corresponding trajectories of the money domain. After successfully piecing together all the trajectories the last time, there was an additional chapter in the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, Void Lightning Technique. Later on, he tried to piece together the power trajectories of Xiao Luo and Old K, but he did not succeed. At that time, Zhou Wen had roughly guessed that the power of Shiryu's primordial energy art required at least a heaven realm perfect domain. It might even be more demanding. Toad Immortal's strength was stronger than the Void True Salamander's, and it was even stranger. Zhou Wen felt that there was a high chance that he could turn the money domain into a primordial energy art. Of course, Zhou Wen definitely wouldn't cultivate a primordial energy art. However, the process of condensing a primordial energy art was also a process of Shiryu's evolution. It would make Shiryu stronger. After condensing the Void Lightning Blast, Shiryu could seal the Heaven Realm Void Lightning domain that couldn't be sealed. Then, after transforming the money domain into a primordial energy art, he should be able to seal Toad Immortal's money domain. When the time came, Zhou Wen would have a much higher chance of defeating Toad Immortal. Since Toad Immortal wasn't in a rush to risk his life, Zhouwen was even less anxious. The two of them each had their own ulterior motives. The battle looked intense, but in fact it wasn't that dangerous. Nine Yang and Xiao rushed into the glacier rift. After passing through the glacier layer, they realized that there was still a rocky abyss beneath them that led deep into the Earth's core. There were flickering lights inside, and their vision and various primordial energy reconnaissance abilities were blocked. It was unknown how deep it was. Occasionally, they could see a strange blue light flickering below. It was still the calamity creature that resembled a blue ribbon of light flying towards the abyss. Strange. Xiao stared at the abyss and said with a frown. What did you discover? Nine Yang asked. From the music that tempted dimensional creatures to attack in a suicidal manner, the companion beasts of this planet should be music-type. But look inside the abyss. Is there any trace of music-type powers? Xiao said as he pointed into the abyss. It's indeed a little strange. I don't see any music-type powers. There's only a power that's close to death. Nine Yang sensed for a moment before continuing, however, that dark aura of death is my Sun Divine Light's nemesis. Xiao nodded. In that case, let's go in and take a look. Don't let those calamity creatures snatch the initiative. It will be troublesome if the companion beasts are devoured by them. Nine Yang nodded slightly as the Sun Divine Light bloomed from his body as he charged into the abyss. Xiao followed behind Nine Yang and used the power of the Sun Divine Light to block the illusory light from the abyss. After descending an unknown number of meters into the abyss, the illusory light in front of them suddenly vanished. Inside was a huge spherical space. Is this the core of the planet? Nine Yang looked around and realized that in the middle of the huge spherical space, there was a white egg-shaped object floating. The egg-shaped object looked very strange. The white outer shell looked like a membrane of some creature. It looked very thin, so thin that it was almost transparent. One could even see a blurry light penetrating through the membrane-like outer shell. On the membrane-like outer shell, one could see many black lines that resembled blood vessels. The lines were of different thicknesses and were distributed under the outer shell, but they were very prominent. No matter how one looked at them, they looked like blood vessels. Furthermore, the entire egg was like a heart, contracting and expanding. As the egg contracted and expanded, the blood vessels also became thicker and thinner. There was also liquid flowing inside, making it look ugly and strange. Chapter 1635. The 5 calamity creatures from before surrounded the egg-shaped object. Blue ribbons of light circled above them. The 2 one-horned wolves occupied the left side, while the strange fish was on the right. In the direction furthest from Nine Suns and Company was the magnetic storm. From time to time, tentacles would extend out, as though they wanted to sweep away the white egg-shaped object. However, they didn't dare to do so and quickly shrank back. The arrival of Nine Yang and Xiao immediately raised the vigilance of the calamity creatures. They constantly sized them up. Once they discovered that they were too weak or had any weaknesses, they would probably immediately attack to reduce their competitors. Can you see the situation inside? Nine Yang asked Xiao when he saw that the calamity creatures seemed to be afraid of each other and didn't take the initiative to attack them. His combat strength was very strong, but he was far inferior to Xiao Lai in some special formulations. Zhao's eyes suffused a demonic glow as his pupils turned white, fusing with the sclera of his eyes. He looked like a blind person without pupils. After staring at the white egg-shaped object for a few seconds, Zhao's eyes returned to normal. He looked at Nine Yang and shook his head. I can't see what's inside. I can only sense that there's a life form inside. It shouldn't be wrong. This is the core of the planet. The planet's companion beast should be incubated here. I reckon that the scarred abyss we entered was the path opened up by the parasitic companion beast when it rushed in, Nine Yang guessed after some thought. That's right, but those 5 calamity creatures don't look simple. It probably won't be easy to snatch the companion beast from their mouth. Furthermore, the companion beast inside might appear at any time. When the time comes, we won't just be facing 5 calamity creatures, Xiao said. Then let's follow the plan. Contract the companion beast before it appears, or kill it ahead of time, Nine Yang said. Don't be anxious. If we go over now, we will probably be surrounded by those calamity creatures. Xiao shook his head slightly, indicating for Nine Yang not to go over for the time being. To be able to become a calamity-grade creature, their intelligence isn't too low. Even some creatures with low intelligence have already accumulated considerable experience and intuition. No one is willing to become a target, but they don't know that if the companion beast is born, it's hard to say who will be the next target, Nine Yang said with a cold snort when he saw that none of the 5 calamity creatures were willing to charge forward. So, we have to think of a way to add fuel to the fire, Xiao said as he looked at the white egg-shaped object. What should we do? Jiu Yang asked. You can just stay here and support me. I am more proficient in starting a fire. After saying that, Xiao took a step forward and his figure disappeared like a phantom. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the white egg-shaped object. He stretched out a hand and slapped it. Crackle! Xiao was the closest to the electromagnetic storm. Before he could touch the white egg-shaped object, he saw the tentacles in the electromagnetic storm dance wildly. Every tentacle brought with it a terrifying electromagnetic storm, causing the electromagnetic storm that originally covered its body to expand, enveloping half of the planet's interior space. Before the electromagnetic storm landed on Shaw's body, he nimbly turned around and disappeared in the blink of an eye. A large area of the electromagnetic storm fell on nothing, and even more of the electromagnetic storm landed on the white egg-shaped object. With a series of crackling sounds, the white egg-shaped object rapidly shrank as though it had suffered damage. The egg-shaped object shrank by more than half its original size. This immediately made the other 4 calamity creatures unable to watch the show. All of them carried terrifying domain powers, hoping to control the white egg-shaped object in their domains. The black and white wolf's domains were very strange. The black wolf's domain power was a black barrier, while the white wolf's domain power was a white barrier. When they stood together, where the black and white boundaries overlapped, the boundaries became transparent, as if they had disappeared. The strange fish waved its tail. Its graceful tail that resembled a cloud seemed to blot out the sky as it blanketed the white egg-shaped object. The blue ribbon of light was even more direct. With a flash, it wrapped around the white egg-shaped object. Apart from the strange fish's domain powers being slower, the domain powers of the other 4 calamity creatures landed almost at the same time. Together with the calamity creature that had used the electromagnetic storm, all sorts of domain powers intertwined, instantly producing a terrifying explosion. All sorts of powers constantly collided, producing continuous explosions and shockwaves. The entire space trembled as cracks appeared on the hard rocks that supported the planet's interior space. Extremely hard rocks constantly fell. The 5 calamity creatures were sent flying. None of them managed to snatch the white egg-shaped object. At some point in time, Xiao had hidden behind Nine Yang and said with a smile, "Such powerful destructive power actually failed to break through its outer shell and cause a certain degree of damage to it, right?" The divine light of the sun bloomed from Nine Yang's body and blocked the incoming shockwave. He said in surprise, "Among these 5 calamity creatures, 2 of them seem to be at the heaven realm. The other 3 are also powerful hell-level creatures. Furthermore, the domain powers of the 3 hell-level creatures are very special. It's fine if it's at the hell realm, but it's hard to say if it's at the heaven realm," Xiao said as his expression suddenly changed. In the middle of the explosion, the white egg-shaped object shrank to the height of a person. The membrane that was almost transparent had turned into the color of milk. It looked much thicker. Most importantly, the terrifying explosion of energy just now had not been able to hurt it at all. What kind of companion beast was this planet's original companion beast? Is its eggshell's defense that strong? The attacks of 2 Heaven Realm and 3 Hell Realm creatures failed to injure it at all? Xiao said with a frown. From the looks of it, your fire didn't burn very well. Nine Yang wasn't looking at the white egg-shaped object. Instead, he was looking at the calamity creatures because they were engaged in a frenzied battle. The monster in the electromagnetic storm and the strange fish were clearly at the Heaven Realm. Their strength was extremely terrifying. The black and white wolves were likely only at the Hell Realm, but when their domain powers stacked together, they could actually resist the power of a Heaven Realm creature. They didn't let the strange fish or the monsters in the electromagnetic storm gain too much of an advantage. The calamity creature that looked like a blue ribbon of light was likely at the Hell Realm, but its powers were very strange. It shuttled through various domains without being affected much. The 5 monsters fought each other, hoping to snatch the white egg-shaped object and have a full meal. However, they didn't notice that there were some thin cracks on the white egg-shaped object. Chapter 1636. I can't wait any longer. Nine Yang noticed the abnormality on the white egg-shaped object and knew that he couldn't wait any longer. If he delayed any longer, the companion beast inside would probably be born. The sun god's light erupted with resplendent divine light. Nine Yang seemed to transform into an arrow of light that pierced through space-time. He instantly arrived in front of the white egg-shaped object, hoping to penetrate it with the sun god's light. However, before his sun god's light could touch the white egg-shaped object, he saw several huge tentacles extend out from behind the white egg-shaped object and block it. The sun god's light clashed with the tentacles, forcefully severing the tentacles wrapped in electromagnetic field. Some of them were even sliced into pieces. However, in the next second, electromagnetic fields flashed as the tentacles that had been sliced into pieces condensed again and swept towards Nine Yang. While Nine Yang was fighting the tentacle monster, Xiao secretly teleported behind the white egg-shaped object and extended his finger to cut it open. However, a blue beam of light swept over at an unbelievable speed. Xiao had no choice but to retract his finger. Otherwise, his finger would have been severed by the blue light before it could even touch the white egg-shaped object. The other calamity creatures also rushed over, turning the scene even more chaotic. Xiao dodged the blue light and the strange fish's attacks a few times, but he never had the chance to approach the white egg-shaped object. Help me open a path. The sun god's light on Nine Yang's body became even more resplendent. His entire body seemed to transform into light, and every strike was like a hydrogen bomb explosion. However, when such a powerful force bombarded the transparent barrier formed by the black and white wolves, it was unable to break through the barrier. In the end, it was unable to charge over. I think it's better if you help me open a path. Zhao's figure flashed like a phantom, luring the strange fish and the blue light to Nine Yang's vicinity. Nine Yang's body emitted divine light, almost enveloping the entire planet's interior space. A few calamity creatures were attacked, so they couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Zhao's whereabouts. Xiao finally found an opportunity. He arrived in front of the white egg-shaped object like a ghost. While the calamity creatures couldn't stop him in time, he pointed at the white egg-shaped object. Just as Su thought he was about to succeed, the white egg-shaped object suddenly shattered like glass. The white fragments scattered in all directions, turning into a sticky white liquid wherever they came into contact with. Although Xiao Luo was the closest, his reaction was the fastest. Before the white fragments could touch him, his figure had already disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already far away. He dodged left and right, avoiding the white fragments that were flying towards him. The other calamity creatures and 9 suns were also affected. The tentacle monster used its tentacles to lash at the white fragments, and some of the white fragments stuck to its tentacles. The strange fish used its tail to sweep away the debris, but it also got stuck with some white liquid. The black and white wolves were protected by the barrier, and all the white fragments were blocked by the barrier. Outside the barrier, there were pools of white goo everywhere. The blue light was the fastest, dodging all the white fragments. The divine light of the sun on Jiu Yang's body was too intense. Everything around him was vaporized, including the white fragment. They couldn't get close to him at all. The calamity creatures looked at the spot where the white egg-shaped object was. They saw a white companion beast floating where the white egg-shaped object had been. It looked very strange. Its entire body was snow-white like jade. Its body was upright and its legs were like sheep's, but its upper limbs were like a hairless monkey's. Its nails were extremely sharp and emitted a jade luster. Its eyes were very large, and its nose was sharp and short. When it pursed its mouth, only a slight curve could be seen. There was no hair on its head, and the back of its head was abnormally large. It hung down to its back like a curved horn. One couldn't sense any vitality from its body. It was like a lifeless jade sculpture, but its eyes were moving. Its vertical pupils that resembled those of a cat's eyes were slowly turning left and right as though it was observing the calamity creatures and 9 suns. The tentacle monster brought with it an electromagnetic storm as huge tentacles swept towards the companion beast. The companion beast watched as the huge dragon-like tentacles swept over with electromagnetic forces. It didn't know how to dodge. All it did was stand there and look at it in a daze. The tentacles had already arrived in front of the companion beast and had even wrapped around its body, but the companion beast remained motionless. The calamity creatures, 9 suns and Xiao, who had been watching the entire time, felt a little regretful. If they had known that the companion beast would be so foolish, they would have rushed forward immediately. Just as they thought that the tentacle monster was too rash, it seemed like it had struck first. It was already too late for them to rush over. Seeing that the companion beast was wrapped up by the tentacles and about to be pulled into the electromagnetic storm, the calamity creatures were filled with regret when they saw the tentacles suddenly stop. The tentacles froze in midair, looking like they were still trembling. The tentacles that had wrapped around the companion beast slowly loosened. Just as everyone was wondering what had happened, they suddenly saw something white seep out from the tentacles. It was as though white paint had seeped out from the tentacles as white spots rapidly expanded on its body. At first, it looked like it had white spots, but later on, most of its body turned white and glowed with a jade-like luster. Not long after, all the tentacles and even the body in the electromagnetic storm had turned into white jade. It wasn't just the tentacle monster. The strange fish was also experiencing the same thing. A large number of white spots appeared on its tail before rapidly spreading from its tail to its body. It was obvious that the strange fish had been trying its best to escape the white infection, but its strength was unable to stop anything. Soon, its entire body was dyed white, turning into a white fish that resembled jade. "Something's wrong." Xiao frowned. "Don't tell me those 2 fellows." Before 9 suns could finish his sentence, he saw the tentacle monster and the strange fish let out strange cries at the same time. They came to the companion beast's side from the left and right like a monster version of Admiral Heng and Admiral Ha. Xiao and 9 suns exchanged looks, knowing that things were a little troublesome. Among the 5 calamity creatures, there were only 2 at the heaven realm, but they were being controlled by the companion beast. As expected of an existence that can parasitize a planet's interior, Xiao said with a sigh. He didn't expect to complete anything easily. The companion beast had been forced to appear before it had fully developed. It had even escaped the capture of many experts during the Battle of the Gods and forcefully parasitized a planet. Xiao didn't believe that such an existence could be easily killed. Chapter 1637. The companion beast only watched without any intention of moving. The controlled electromagnetic tentacle monster and strange fish ferociously pounced at 9 Yang and company. Their strength didn't change, but they seemed to have become stronger. A large electromagnetic storm enveloped them. Nine Yang condensed the sun's divine light and collided with the electromagnetic storm, causing a terrifying energy explosion. Dazzling spots of light appeared everywhere, so dazzling that they couldn't open their eyes. Another strange fish's cloud-like tail scattered down, enveloping the black and white wolves, the blue ribbon of light and Xiao. The blue ribbon of light was too fast. In a flash, it rushed out of the tail's range. Zhao's figure changed as he vanished like a ghost. Only the black and white wolves weren't fast enough. All they could do was conjure a barrier to forcefully block the strange fish's tail. The cloud-like tail wrapped around the barrier. Although it failed to shatter the barrier, the tail wrapped around the barrier and constantly shrank. The barrier was also compressed bit by bit. Seeing that the situation wasn't looking good, the blue ribbon of light headed straight for the exit. It followed the abyss's passageway to the outside world and rushed out without looking back. "Xiao, are you confident?" Nine Yang asked as he fought the electromagnetic tentacle monster. "Let's give it a try. That fellow's strength is probably more terrifying than we expected." As Xiao spoke, he had already charged at the companion beast that had just appeared like a phantom. Although Xiao came from the Trajectory Holy Temple, he was proficient in the various techniques of the 6 holy temples. He could even use the various famous martial arts techniques of the Federation with ease. At the instant he teleported in front of the companion beast, Zhao's entire body moved. Every part of his body turned into a terrifying killing weapon. Even his pinky finger and even his tongue had become a terrifying killing weapon. Coupled with Zhao's strange movement technique, he instantly delivered countless attacks. Fingers, palms, fists, elbows, shoulders, knees, legs, and feet, all sorts of attacks landed on the companion beast's white, jade-like body like a storm. Almost every inch of its body was struck countless times. Every strike contained terrifying power that penetrated its body. It was unknown if it had reacted in time, but the companion beast had no strength to resist Zhao's attack. Its body was sent retreating before it was sent flying by Zhao's punch. Rumble! The companion beast's body flew out and slammed into the rock dome, creating a huge crater as its body sank into the shattered rock. The companion beast's body was embedded in the rock, but it didn't struggle. Its cat-like eyes stared straight ahead as though it had no focus. It was unknown what it was looking at. Xiao didn't have any intention of stopping. He instantly arrived in front of the companion beast and threw out a barrage of punches at its face. Just as the illusory fist was about to land on the companion beast's face, the fist shadows that filled the sky suddenly vanished. A claw grabbed Zhao's fist. Shaw struggled to break free from the claw, but his wrist was about to break. His fist, which was being held by the claw, did not move at all. He could not break free no matter how hard he tried. This was no trivial matter. Zhao's other arm and legs moved together as his body slammed into the companion beast in an extremely strange posture. Every joint of his body seemed to contain immense explosive force. Before Zhao's attack landed on the companion beast's fist suddenly exerted strength as it lifted Zhao's body with one hand. Boom! Zhao's body flipped uncontrollably as he was slammed into the rock. Blood spewed out of his mouth as his bones cracked. It was unknown how many of them had been shattered. At some point in time, the companion beast's body had emerged from the rock. It floated in the air and looked at Xiao, who had been smashed into the rock. Its cat-like eyes gradually began to glow. With a strange smile, it stared at Xiao in front of it. Xiao stared at it as well. He felt an unprecedented sense of danger. Xiao had experienced too many storms. He knew when it looked dangerous and when it was truly dangerous. Even the time he entered the Lake of Vexation had not made him feel so dangerous. "Xiao, be careful." Nine Suns wanted to rush over to help, but the electromagnetic tentacle monster held him back without any fear of death. No matter how Nine Suns attacked, the electromagnetic tentacle monster's body would attract each other again before fusing into one. It was as though it wasn't a living creature at all, but an amalgamation of countless iron sand particles. Due to the existence of electromagnetism, no matter how its body was destroyed, it could eventually be attracted back and reassembled into a whole. They were both at the heaven realm. Although Nine Suns had absorbed the holy artifact and his offensive strength was far stronger than the electromagnetic tentacle monsters, one of them didn't defend at all and attacked with all his might. The other had to take many things into consideration. Even though he had the advantage, he was unable to escape the electromagnetic monster's entanglement. Xiao heard Nine Suns' warning, but it was already too late. In fact, he had already begun moving his body, hoping to use the power of trajectory to travel through the void and distance himself from the companion beast. However, just as his body was about to escape into the void, a claw grabbed his neck. He had already turned into a phantom, as though he didn't have a corporeal body. One of his feet had already stepped into the void as he was pulled out. Bam! The claw that was grabbing Zhao's neck pressed into the rock. Zhao's entire body sank into the rock again, causing the hard rock to scatter in all directions. Rock fragments fell everywhere. Following that, the companion beast's entire body seemed to transform into a killing weapon. Fingers, palms, fists, feet, legs, knees, elbows, and so on landed on Xiao like a storm. Just like a replica of Zhao's bombardment of companion beasts, every inch of Zhao's body crackled from the companion beast's attacks. All the bones in his body nearly broke. What was even more terrifying was that Zhao's trajectory power was unable to extricate him from his present predicament. He was forcefully suppressed here and suffered the concentrated attack. Wow! Xiao spewed out blood as his body twisted and deformed. He sank into the rock and no longer looked like a human's body. Xiao! Nine Suns was alarmed. Although they had already estimated the companion beast's abilities to be very high, they never expected it to be this high. After fusing with the holy artifact, Xiao was already at the heaven realm. Furthermore, with Zhao's abilities, he was one of the best at the heaven realm. It was unimaginable that he would be beaten up in such a manner. Don't come over. Just as Nine Suns was about to rush over to attract the companion beast's attention, he heard Zhao's voice. Zhao's voice wasn't one of pessimistic self-sacrifice. It didn't have the loneliness of a loser, nor did it have the weakness it should have. Anyway, it had a terrifying sense of madness. Nine Suns looked at Xiao in puzzlement and realized that there was still blood at the corner of his mouth. However, his eyes were somewhat terrifying. His eyes seemed to be filled with madness. Chapter 1638. Jiu Yang was slightly startled. He had always thought that Xiao was the kind of person who would not reveal any emotions no matter what kind of situation he was in. Even when facing death, Jiu Yang had never seen him show any abnormal emotions. It was as if death was as easy as going home to Xiao to sleep. The cultivation path of a saint was very cruel. Every saint was very strong, but that did not mean that every saint had amazing talent. It was because saints without outstanding talent or achievements had long been eliminated. Therefore, to outsiders, as long as they came out of the Holy Land, they seemed very strong, but they did not know how cruel it was. Nine Yang remembered very clearly that he had seen Xiao when they were very young. At that time, Xiao was a Path Holy Temple candidate saint, and he was a Sun Holy Temple candidate saint. They rarely had the chance to meet, but every once in a while, the 6 temples would have a joint test. All the 6 temples' saint candidates would participate in the test together. The last few in the test would be directly eliminated. As for where the eliminated saints went, no one knew. Anyway, they had never been seen again. Nine Yang was the kind of person who took a long time to warm up and accept new things. Therefore, his ranking was very low every time. There was one time when he almost fell into the list of eliminated people. It was at that time that he noticed Xiao. Xiao was about the same age as him. Back then, they were still children, just a little over 10 years old. In the past, Nine Yang had not noticed Xiao because during the joint test between the 6 temples, the better the saint's results were, the closer they would stand. Nine Yang had always stood at the back, and Xiao had always stood in front. However, this time, Xiao stood behind Nine Yang. This was also the first time Nine Yang had paid attention to Xiao seriously. That time had been very dangerous. Xiao was only one place away from being eliminated. All the saint candidates after Xiao had been pulled out, and they had never seen them again. Back then, a child who was also at the back and was more familiar with Xiao asked Xiao, "Xiao, your actual combat ability is so impressive. You can at least be in the top 3. Why did you lose?" "Because I'm not good with my left hand." Xiao's answer made Nine Yang, who was standing by the side, feel very strange. The child from before was also puzzled, so he asked, "Whether you're good at using your left hand or not, does it have anything to do with whether you can win or not?" "I want to use my left hand to defeat all the prospective holy disciples, so I only used my left hand. However, I lost miserably. However, from now on, I will only use my left hand until I defeat all the prospective holy disciples in the 6 halls joint test," Xiao answered. When Jiuyang heard this, he did not think much of it. In such a cruel competition, if Su only used his left hand, which he was not good at, to fight, he was afraid that he would die miserably in the future. In a life-or-death situation, he would definitely not be able to resist using his left hand. However, it wasn't until the next joint examination that 9 sons realized that Xiao wasn't joking. In that fierce battle, Xiao didn't even use his right hand. In the entire battle, Xiao only used his left hand. He didn't use his right hand even once. In the end, Xiao Tianran lost miserably. He didn't even manage to win a single round. This was also very normal. The holy disciples who could survive were all talented people who were willing to work hard. Furthermore, they were too young, so the techniques they could learn were very limited. At that time, it was very difficult to widen the gap between them. If Xiao had fought seriously, it wasn't impossible for him to be in the top 3 or even first place. However, he had been fighting with his left hand, which he was not good at. Other people had trained their hands for more than 10 years, but he had only trained his hand for a month. How could they compare? Jiuyang originally thought that at the last moment, Xiao would definitely use his right hand to fight with all his might. However, he didn't. Even when he was on the elimination list, Xiao still didn't use his right hand. Jiuyang watched helplessly as Xiao fell into the elimination group. He was really puzzled. Xiao could clearly survive. He could clearly win. Why didn't he use his right hand? Not using his right hand was a rule he had set himself. He could completely not abide by it, and no one would laugh at him. In fact, not many people even knew about it. "Why don't you use your right hand?" Before Xiao was taken away, Jiuyang quietly asked Xiao. "I said that I'll only use my left hand, so I'll only use my left hand." Xiao answered very casually, as though the person who was about to be eliminated wasn't him. If the holy deity hadn't protected Xiao back then, Zhao's corpse would probably have been reduced to ashes. From then on, Jiuyang would pay attention to Xiao from time to time. However, no matter when or how dangerous the situation was, he had never seen Xiao show any emotions. It was as though he was a programmed robot that didn't have any emotions. But now, Xiao Chen actually had such a crazy expression. That kind of emotion was something Jiuyang had never seen before. He was a little worried that Xiao Chen had already lost his composure. If that was the case, it would truly be dangerous. He was afraid that he wouldn't even have the chance to escape. "You can't take my life." Zhao's eyes were as crazy as a demon's, but his voice was so cold that it was terrifying. The companion beast ignored Xiao as its body once again bombarded Xiao like a storm. Bam! 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 The companion beast's attacks were forcefully blocked by Xiao. Xiao Luo didn't dodge. Instead, he blocked all of the attacks head-on. At such a close distance, Xiao Luo was able to block all of the attacks that were as fast as lightning. His reflexes seemed to have reached an unimaginable level. Even an attack that was right in front of his face would be blocked by Xiao. No. It's not purely fast. It's more like Xiao has long sealed off all possibilities. No matter how the companion beast attacks, it will eventually deliver itself to be blocked by Xiao. How powerful! Nine Yang's eyes wavered as though he was in disbelief. He had always thought that he was the strongest among all the holy disciples in terms of combat ability and intent. However, Xiao Luo, who was as crazy as a demon, had shattered his understanding and made him doubt himself. Without a doubt, Zhao's combat strength wasn't weaker than his. His intent was even stronger than his. This was somewhat different from the Xiao he knew. Zhao's eyes were filled with fighting spirit, but his actions were calm and decisive like a machine. He didn't make any mistakes in that crazy battle. How did he do it? Nine Suns was shocked, but also a little suspicious. This was almost a different person from the Xiao he usually knew, but he was clearly Xiao. It couldn't be fake. What puzzled Nine Yang even more was that if this was Zhao's true strength, why didn't Xiao use such an ability when they attacked Zhouwen? Chapter 1639. Li Xiao, do me a favor. In the back garden of the Li family, a beautiful boy came in from the dog hole and said to another boy, "What for?" Li Xiao asked the beautiful boy. "Bury me in your garden," pretty boy said with a serious face. "Why do you want to do that?" Li Xiao looked at the beautiful boy with a blank expression. He didn't seem surprised at all. If other children heard this, they would definitely be very surprised and even shocked and scared, but Li Xiao wasn't because he knew the beautiful boy in front of him. He knew that he didn't need to be surprised at anything he did because there must be a reason for it. If there was no reason, then there must be no reason in the world. It was definitely not the beautiful boy who was unreasonable. "I want to try what it feels like to be a dead person," said the beautiful boy. "If you bury me, you will really be a dead person," Li Xiao said with a grin. "No, I have already learned the breathing Daoyin technique. As long as I'm not buried too deep, I won't die." The beautiful boy ran to a small open space in the garden, grabbed a handful of soil, shook it and said, "They won't let me try at home, so I can only try here. Hurry up and bury me." Li Xiao walked over with a blank expression and dug the soil with the beautiful boy. It was originally used to grow roses, but because they hadn't bought a suitable variety, it was temporarily empty there. The two of them dug a 2-foot-deep pit together. The beautiful boy hid in it and tried it. The length was just right, so he said to Li Xiao, "Li Xiao, go find a bamboo tube and put it in my mouth, then bury me. I will breathe with that bamboo tube." The two of them worked for a long time and finally buried the beautiful boy. Only half of the bamboo tube was exposed. Li Xiao reached out and tried it. He could feel the breathing of the bamboo tube, and he was slightly relieved. Time passed. At the beginning, Li Xiao was still very worried. He would try it from time to time, afraid that the beautiful boy would not breathe. But later, he found that the air flow in the bamboo tube had always been very rhythmic, long, and powerful. It shouldn't be a big problem. According to the agreement between the two, Li Xiao had to dig out the boy after 72 hours. But on the first night, something strange happened. Li Xiao was used to sleeping alone since he was very young. It wasn't that he was willing to sleep alone, but he had two younger brothers down there. His mother had to take care of them. Even if one of them slept on each side, he wouldn't have a place to sleep. What's more, Li Xiao wasn't a person who would act coquettishly. He wasn't too young either, so he slept in a room by himself a long time ago. Today, not long after Li Xiao fell asleep, he was suddenly awakened by a strange sound. He opened his eyes in a daze and found someone standing by his bed. The moonlight today was not bad. He could see that the figure was a child, about the same age as him. Li Xiao thought that it was the beautiful boy who had climbed out by himself. He rubbed his eyes and asked, Tianyu, why did you climb out by yourself? Tianyu, why did you crawl out by yourself? As soon as the figure opened his mouth, Li Xiao was startled. His entire body quivered and he completely woke up. Not only was the figure imitating him, but even the voice and tone were exactly the same. For a moment, Li Xiao even suspected that it was him who was speaking. Who the hell are you? Li Xiao suddenly sat up and leaned his back against the wall. Standing on the bed, he vigilantly looked at the figure. Because there was only moonlight, and it was shining from behind the figure, Li Xiao couldn't clearly see what it looked like. He just looked at the silhouette. The more he looked, the more he felt that it looked like him. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Who the hell are you? The voice sounded again. It was still the same voice and tone as Li Xiao. Li Xiao stared at the figure and suddenly punched him in the face. The figure's head tilted slightly, dodging Li Xiao's fist. At the same time, he punched Li Xiao's face. Li Xiao couldn't dodge it. The punch smashed into his nose. However, he did not care and continued to throw punches at the figure. He used all his strength, wanting to leave something on the figure's body. But the figure's speed and strength were clearly much stronger than Li Xiao's. He easily dodged Li Xiao's attack. Because he dodged Li Xiao's fist, the figure turned sideways to face the moonlight. Li Xiao immediately saw his face clearly. The face was exactly the same as Li Xiao's. It was as if they were carved from the same mold. Even the painful expression of Li Xiao's bleeding nose was replicated by the face. This time, Li Xiao was not frightened, nor did he look surprised. He just shouted and at the same time pounced on the child who looked like him. His attack was easily dodged by the child. And no matter how he shouted, there was no response from outside. It was as if he was the only one left in the entire Li family's courtyard. Am I dreaming? No, it's not a dream. This is definitely not a dream. Li Xiao calmed down and pounced on the child again. He knew that his strength and speed were much worse than that of the child, but he had to leave something on the child. Otherwise, he would be silently replaced, and no one would know that Li Buxiu was no longer the Li Buxiu of the past. Li Xiao did not know what kind of existence it was and why it would do such a thing, but he knew very well what he could do. Again and again, the boy dodged all of his attacks. His punches and kicks were also easily blocked. He was unable to hurt the boy, but he was hit many times. Every time he was injured, he showed a painful performance or other expressions. The boy would imitate it like a puppet. Dad. Mom. Housekeeper. Dad. Mom. Housekeeper. Li Xiao was shouting, and the boy was also shouting. He imitated his voice so vividly that even Li Xiao himself could not tell that it was two different voices. Li Xiao shut his mouth because he had already understood that shouting was useless. If it was useful, his family would have come to save him after shouting for so long. Why aren't you shouting? The boy saw that Li Xiao was holding back his words, and there was no expression on his face at all. He finally opened his mouth and said something. Li Xiao still did not say a word. He just desperately pounced on the boy. Even if it was just a scratch, he wanted to leave something on the boy's body. Not shouting? Then I'll help you, the boy said coldly. He suddenly raised his leg and kicked at Li Xiao's chest. Li Xiao could not dodge in time and was directly kicked to the ground. But he gritted his teeth and did not make a sound. He even tried to control the expression on his face so that the muscles on his face would not change. Chapter 1640. You can endure it, right? I'd like to see just how much you can endure. The boy kicked Li Xiao's body again and again. He even stepped on Li Xiao's fingers, forcefully breaking the bones of his fingers. A 10-year-old boy didn't even make a sound under such torture. His face twitched unnaturally, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. His eyes were bloodshot, and they looked like they were about to pop out of their socket. However, it could be seen that Li Xiao was trying his best to control his expressions. He was trying his best not to let the boy copy his expressions and reactions. No matter how the boy tortured Li Xiao's expression didn't change much. Other than the pain in his body, which caused his face to twitch uncontrollably, it was hard to find any other expression on Li Xiao's face. He couldn't even find an expression of anger or hatred. The boy could only see mockery and disdain in Li Xiao's eyes. This seemed to have touched a chord in the boy's heart. It made the boy's expressionless face show anger and violence. He directly stepped on Li Xiao's head, causing Li Xiao's head to be covered in blood. However, he still didn't stop. Ha ha! Li Xiao laughed despite being tortured like this. He laughed very happily. The boy couldn't help but be stunned when he saw Li Xiao laughing wildly. He really couldn't understand why Li Xiao could still laugh, and laugh so happily at that. Shouldn't Li Xiao be crying bitterly at a time like this? Shouldn't he be resentful and angry? Shouldn't he hate him to the bone? Shouldn't he be terrified and uneasy? There was none of that. Li Xiao was only laughing, and he was laughing very happily. It was a happiness that came from the bottom of his heart, and it wasn't an act. There was even a hint of pride in his smile. What are you laughing at? For some reason, when he saw Li Xiao laughing, the boy's heart burned with anger. He stomped hard on Li Xiao's face as he asked through gritted teeth. I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at how you don't understand. Li Xiao's mouth was full of blood, and he spoke intermittently. Because there was too much blood, his words were unclear. Don't understand what? The boy lowered his head and approached Li Xiao, wanting to hear what Li Xiao was saying. You're an idiot if you don't understand. But the moment the boy got close to Li Xiao opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood onto the boy's face. The boy couldn't help but close his eyes. Bang! Just as he closed his eyes, Li Xiao's head smashed into his chin, causing the boy's chin to twist and his head to tilt back. At this moment, Li Xiao seemed to have gone mad. He did not care about the injuries on his body, nor did he care if his bones were broken. His bloody palm ruthlessly smashed the boy's face. Li Xiao's palm had been smashed until it was deformed. The finger bones that had long been broken were twisted beyond recognition. Li Xiao didn't care. Like a madman, he rushed up and punched and kicked the boy. He even used his teeth to bite him. At first, the boy was still resisting, but it was unknown if he was frightened by Li Xiao or if he had been beaten silly. The boy, who was clearly stronger, faster, and more skilled than Li Xiao, screamed in pain from Li Xiao's beating. He actually wanted to escape, but how could he escape? His body was covered in blood, and he couldn't tell if it was his or Li Xiao's. Bang! An old man wearing the clothes of a holy disciple appeared in the room. He directly slapped Li Xiao, who was madly beating the boy, and sent him flying. Li Xiao's body smashed through the window and fell into the garden outside. He rolled far away and landed on the ground. It was unknown if he was dead or alive. However, seeing that he was covered in blood and many of his bones were broken, it was likely that he would not survive. The old man glared at the boy on the ground and coldly scolded, "Trash." The boy was immediately frightened. He immediately got up and kowtowed to the old man. "Sir, don't kill me, don't. The Holy Land spent so much time, energy, and resources to train you, but you are actually worse than a child from an ordinary family. What use do we have for you?" The old man said with a cold face. "Sir, I can do it. I was just careless. I will never make the same mistake again." The boy kowtowed in fear. "Forget it. It will be troublesome to train him again. Continue with your mission. You should know what to do next, right?" the old man said as he looked at Li Xiao, who was unknown whether he was dead or alive. "You could not kill the person you want to replace, and you still need me to help you. It is simply a shame for the Holy Land." The boy quickly lowered his head and said, "There will definitely not be a next time. What are you waiting for? Go and dispose of his body," the old man said coldly. Yes, I will go now." The boy quickly rushed to the garden, took out a small bottle, and poured the liquid in the small bottle on Li Xiao's body. Li Xiao's clothes were immediately corroded by the liquid, and his flesh and bones began to melt. The old man suddenly looked at the night sky outside and said, "There is a terrifying person approaching. Hide the body first. When it has completely melted, I will go and stall that person." The boy quickly moved Li Xiao's body and looked around. Finally, he pushed the body into the grass and hid it. When the boy turned to look again, he found that the old man had disappeared. He looked for a while anxiously and finally waited for the old man to come back. "Who is that?" the boy quickly asked. You don't have to pay attention to him. Has the body completely melted?" the old man said coldly. The boy quickly pushed the grass aside and found that there was only some foul-smelling liquid in the grass. Other than that, there was nothing else. "It's done," the boy said. The old man took a look. After seeing the liquid, he nodded and said, "From today onwards, you are the young master of the Li family, Li Bukri. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir. I am Li Bukri," the boy quickly said. The old man reached out and lifted the foul-smelling liquid along with the grass and soil. He sucked them into a large cloth bag and then turned to leave. "Sir, how can I contact you?" the boy asked quickly. "There is no need to contact you. You are Li Bukri and Li Bukri is you. Only when the Holy Land needs you will you be a saint. When you are needed, a saint will naturally come to summon you." With that, the man left the Li family compound. Strangely enough, after the old man left, the Li family, which was originally like a ghost town, suddenly seemed to have returned to normal. The sound of night insects could be heard everywhere, and there was even the sound of people waking up at night to go to the bathroom. "I am Li Bukri. I am Li Bukri," the boy muttered to himself a few times. Then he treated his wounds and cleaned up the fragments of the glass window. When he returned to his room, in a pool not far from the grass, the pretty boy quietly dragged the seriously injured Li Xiao out. Glancing at the room where Li Xiao used to live, the pretty boy hesitated for a moment and left the Li family through the dog hole with the dying Li Xiao on his back. Chapter 1641. It's been a long time since I had such a feeling. Xiao recalled the past. Ever since he had impersonated Xiao, he had never revealed his true side. He had always been acting as a fake version of himself. There were even times when Xiao was somewhat puzzled as to which one was him and which one was the real Li Xiao. It was only when he completely released himself that Xiao truly felt that he was still the same Li Xiao, the proud son of heaven who could contend with Tianzhua. His eyes were blood-red as his hair flared in anger, but his eyes were extremely cold. He was like an evil ghost that had escaped from the hell of Avicii and had suffered thousands of tortures. His heart was filled with boundless rage, but his heart was already dead. Bam! 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 Zhao's strength and speed gradually exceeded his limit. He fought the companion beast crazily without being at a disadvantage. His attacks were even more ferocious than the companion beast. Bam! Amidst the countless punches and kicks, Xiao was a little faster than the companion beast. He punched the companion beast in the face, sending it flying. It slammed into a rock, causing a large portion of it to collapse. Zhao's figure teleported in front of the companion beast as his punches and kicks bombarded it crazily, sending its body smashing into the rocks. It was unknown how many attacks landed on the companion beast. When Xiao threw out his final punch, the companion beast's body smashed through the rocks, pierced through the ground, and flew into the air. Xiao rushed out as well and stood in midair. He looked at the companion beast that was floating in midair as though all its bones had been broken. Xiao wanted to charge forward again, but he realized that there were two people fighting in the sky not far away. Why is he here? Xiao was taken aback when he saw Zhouwen. He never expected to see Zhouwen here. Zhouwen was fighting the Toad Immortal when he saw two things suddenly spewing out from the ground. He was given a fright. On careful look, he saw that one of them was Xiao, and the other creature looked very strange. He didn't know what it was, but it was clearly a companion beast that was pure energy. All right, there's indeed an ambush. You want to scheme against me? Dream on. Upon seeing Shao Chun and his companion beast rush out, Toad Immortal confirmed his thoughts. He rapidly retreated as the money that filled the sky returned to his robe. The celestial toad looked down from above, observing the situation below and deciding what to do next. Zhouwen didn't chase after Toad Immortal. He was also observing Shao and the companion beast, guessing at what was going on. Zhouwen had always believed that the bee in the plant was a companion beast born from this planet. However, from the looks of it, that wasn't the case. The companion beast that had rushed out of the ground with Shao was very likely a companion beast born from this planet. Kacha! Kacha! While the few of them were preoccupied with their own thoughts, the companion beast slowly moved. It twisted its neck, and its twisted body gradually returned to normal. It stood up again, its body still as perfect as before, as though it had never been injured. Xiao Wei frowned. He had indeed used all of his strength just now. He had even exposed all of his hidden secret. The power of each attack was enough to kill a Heaven Realm expert. The companion beast in front of him had suffered so many attacks, but it had recovered so quickly. Such recovery ability was unbelievable. However, what happened next left Shao even more alarmed. The companion beast's body tensed up as its muscles became obvious. Its entire body seemed to be filled with explosive power. Its eyes turned red, but they didn't seem to have any emotions. This is... Shao Qin looked at the changes in the companion beast's body, and revealed a look of horror. The companion beast's current state was identical to his. This left Shao very alarmed. One had to know that his state wasn't some kind of talent ability or primordial energy skill, but the effects of his mental mutation on his body. This ability was the result of a mental mutation. It couldn't be cultivated, and using it didn't consume any primordial energy. It was Shao Chen's unique ability. Even Tianzhua hadn't been able to learn this ability. Although Shao Chen had told Tianzhua without reservation how to enter such a state, Tianzhua couldn't do it. Later, according to Tianzhua's analysis, Shao Chen's mental state was related to his experiences and thoughts. It wasn't something that others could imitate. However, the companion beast had also entered such a state. It left Shao in disbelief. The companion beast's figure flashed as it charged at Shao. Its strength, speed, constitution, and primordial energy were originally stronger than Shao Chen's, but now it had entered the same special mental state as Shao Chen. Its abilities in all aspects had improved once again. Although Shao Chen maintained the same state, he was once again suppressed. He was surpassed by the companion beast in all aspects. A Heaven Realm free companion beast? When Toad Immortal saw the situation below, his eyes immediately revealed a look of greed. The companion beasts produced by the planet were somewhat different from those on Earth. The companion beasts on Earth could only be used by humans, but the companion beasts produced by the stars in the universe weren't only used by humans. Haha, this immortal's luck is here. I never expected a companion beast of this planet to be born. When Toad Immortal saw the companion beast, he immediately became greedy. This was also because his nature couldn't change. Back when he was with Queen Mother of the West, if he hadn't been greedy, he wouldn't have been sealed in a mortal body like a toad and suppressed for so many years. After all, Toad Immortal had suffered a huge loss once. He had a good memory. Although his greed burned, he still watched from the sidelines and didn't rush forward immediately. If it were in the past, Toad Immortal would have long rushed forward and devoured the companion beast. Toad Immortal didn't want a companion beast, but the pure energy in the companion beast was extremely beneficial to him. It made him salivate. Although Shao Chen was suppressed by the companion beast, he didn't completely lose his resistance. What the companion beast used was the ability he was best at. He knew that ability too well, and with this understanding, Shao was able to deal with it. Battle isn't as simple as imitation. A sneer suffused the corner of Zhao's mouth. He roughly understood that this companion beast had the ability to imitate other creatures, but Zhao didn't believe that such an imitation could defeat him. I haven't wasted my youth in the Holy Land for so many years. The coldness in Zhao's eyes intensified as his gaze turned crazier. Chapter 1642. After all, Zhao wasn't the childly Zhao from back then. What he had learned over the years wasn't as simple as a mental state. His person, his heart, his body, and his abilities were much more mature than before. When he was young, he might have only been able to rely on his mutated mental state to seek the possibility of victory, but to the present Zhao, that wasn't the case. The companion beast attacked again. With the augmentation of its mental state, its speed was unbelievably fast. And just as his fist was about to touch Zhao, Zhao took half a step back. And when the companion beast's fist struck Zhao's body, it passed through it as though Zhao's body wasn't real and was just an illusion. Zhao's figure really began to dissipate like a phantom. Almost at the same time the phantom began to dissipate, another Zhao appeared on the other side of the companion beast and punched the back of the companion beast's head. The companion beast's reaction was extremely fast. It swung its arm and slammed its elbow into Zhao's fist. However, when its elbow collided with the fist, it was astonished to discover that its elbow had passed through Zhao's fist. It didn't feel any strength at all. It was also an illusion. And on the other side, the phantom that should have dissipated slapped the companion beast in the face, causing it to fall backward. What's real is fake, and what's fake is real. You have learned my mental mutation, but you haven't learned my true thoughts. You are just an empty shell. Zhao, who was behind the phantom, actually spoke. At the same time, he leaped up and struck the companion beast's waist with his knee. One could almost hear the sound of the companion beast's spine cracking. The companion beast, whose body was about to snap in half, was sent soaring into the sky like a meteor. Xiao Jing wanted to chase after it and launch a series of fatal attacks at the companion beast, but before he could use his trajectory movement technique to chase after it, he saw a golden light flash in the sky. The companion beast that was soaring into the sky was swept up by the golden light and pulled into the Toad Immortal's mouth. After observing for so long, the Toad Immortal finally found such an opportunity. It used its tongue to wrap around the companion beast and pulled it into its mouth to swallow it. I never expected there to be a pleasant surprise. It actually allowed me to devour a Heaven Realm companion beast so easily. Immortal Toad was somewhat smug as he looked at Xiao and said, "Punk from the Trajectory Holy Temple, go back and tell the holy deity that your immortal Toad has accepted this companion beast." With that, the Toad Immortal ignored Xiao and turned to fly towards Zhou. After all, to him, killing Zhou and snatching back the Moon Essence Basin and Sky Immortal Goose was of utmost importance. Being able to devour a Heaven Realm companion beast and slowly digest its energy was a pleasant surprise. "Did I say that you could leave?" As Toad Fairy flew towards Zhou, he heard Zhao's cold voice. "What, you're not convinced?" Toad Fairy turned around, rolled its eyes, and looked at Xiao. "It's not that I'm unconvinced, but I want to kill you. You shouldn't have taken something that belongs to the temple." As Xiao spoke, his figure flashed and appeared in front of Toad Fairy. His blade-like fingers slashed at Toad Fairy's throat. A golden light flashed in the Toad Immortal's mouth, and his tongue wrapped around Zhao's arm. However, he discovered that it was just an illusion. Another Xiao had already appeared behind him, and his 5 fingers were like hooks, grabbing the fat head of the Toad Immortal. Toad Fairy waved his hand and blocked Zhao's 5 fingers with his golden robe sleeve. However, it was also just an illusion. Xiao, who was like an illusion, continued swiping at Toad Fairy's throat. Golden light flashed in Toad Fairy's mouth again as he cleaved apart Zhao's arm. At the same time, he sneered and said, "Such tricks are fine against idiotic companion beasts, But you're still far from being able to injure me. Bam! Before Toad Fairy could finish his sentence, he realized that the Shao in front of him was still just an illusion. On the other side of his body, a third Shao appeared and punched Toad Fairy in the face. Toad Fairy's face contorted as his body tilted with his face. He slammed into the glacier, causing a large portion of it to collapse. What a powerful fellow! He's already at the heaven realm, right? Zhouwen frowned inwardly. The last time he was able to defeat Shao and Nine Yang, the three saints, was because they hadn't truly advanced to the heaven realm. However, from the looks of it, not only was Shao at the heaven realm, but his strength and realm seemed to be much stronger than before. How long has it been? This fellow has actually grown to such an extent. Is the Holy Land really that rich in resources? Zhouwen was secretly alarmed. Nine Yang had already rushed out. He wasn't in the mood to tangle with the dimensional creature controlled by the companion beast. As he fought, he retreated and rushed out of the planet's interior. He saw the battle between Shao and the companion beast, as well as the scene of him sending Toad Fairy into the glacier. What is this fellow trying to do? Nine Yang looked at Shao as he became increasingly puzzled. The abilities Shao had displayed were much stronger than his. This wasn't because of the increase in strength. It was just that the power brought by the holy artifact wasn't enough to cause such a huge change in Shao. Unless Shao already had a very powerful realm and abilities. However, if that was the case, Nine Yang found Shao even more unfathomable. He even developed a certain level of suspicion. The dimensional creature controlled by the companion beast rushed out and once again pestered Nine Yang. Nine Yang wasn't in the mood to fight it. Although he had no choice but to deal with it, most of his attention was on Shao. Boom! The glacier on the ground collapsed, forming a huge hole. A shock wave spread out from the glacier as a figure rushed out like a cannonball. It was the livid and exasperated Toad Fairy. His cheek was swollen. The punch from before wasn't light. After all, it was an attack at the heaven realm. Toad Fairy was also at the heaven realm, so it wasn't strong enough to ignore attacks of the same level. You're dead. Toad Fairy's eyes flashed with killing intent as he stared at Shao and enunciated each word. You're right. If you don't spit out that companion beast, you're indeed dead, Shao said indifferently. Don't think that you can challenge me just because you've learned a few tricks from the Trajectory Holy Temple. You will soon know how foolish you are. As the toad spoke, its body shone brightly with golden light. Countless coins shot out from the holes on its body like stars. They were nailed to the nearby void, shrouding a large area within the domain of money. Chapter 1643. Under the envelopment of the money domain, all sorts of powers were immediately sealed. Even essence energy found it difficult to flow normally. Zhao's body immediately sank, as if he had fallen out of some special trajectory. When he moved again, he could no longer leave behind any afterimages. Even the flow of primal qi in his body became slightly sluggish, and he could no longer release it out of his body. It's still too early for you to fight me. The Toad Immortal's tongue moved again and instantly appeared in front of Shao, wrapping around his neck. Shao was unable to enter the void trajectory again, making it difficult for him to dodge the tongue. All he could do was use his hand to block the golden light. Bam! Zhao's body was sent flying, and the tongue once again chased after him like lightning, whipping around Zhao's body. Shao tried his best, but he could only barely block the tongue's attack. He had no strength left to counterattack and was passively beaten. This was because he had been maintaining his mental mutation state. Otherwise, he might have been swallowed by the tongue. 9 Suns and the electromagnetic tentacle monster were also within the money domain's range. Affected by the money domain, the divine sunlight on 9 Suns' body immediately converged. It could only circulate in its body and not be released outside. The electromagnetic storm around the electromagnetic tentacle monster also disappeared, revealing its true form. He originally imagined that this fellow was a huge octopus, but in fact, that wasn't the case. Its main body was like a meat pillar formed by intertwining tentacles. The tentacles extended out from the meat pillar. And in the middle of the meat pillar was a huge eyeball. Its pupils were like wheels as it looked around, making it look extremely strange. This was because its body had turned into white jade, making it look like a white jade statue. It wasn't that terrifying. If it had its original color and appearance, it would probably be even more terrifying. Although the electromagnetic monster and 9 suns couldn't release their essence energy was still circulating in their bodies. It wasn't completely sealed. This was thanks to them being at the heaven realm. If it were some low-level creatures, their essence energy would probably be completely sealed, turning them into trash that couldn't use any essence energy. Xiao wanted to summon his companion beasts, but he realized that he couldn't. The money domain's sealing effect was just too powerful. Ding! The toad immortal suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a golden beam. Xiao could already sense that the golden beam was somewhat different from the previous tongue, but he had no chance of dodging. All he could do was throw a punch. When his fist collided with the golden beam, Xiao saw that it was a golden ancient coin. The ancient coin seemed to contain a huge suction force as it stuck to his fist. In an instant, Xiao felt the essence energy in his body vanish without a trace. The last bit of his resistance had been wiped away. Die! The toad immortal's tongue swept over again. Without Yuan Qi, although Zhao's physical strength was not bad, it was difficult for him to withstand the toad's tongue. Although he tried his best to push the tongue away, his body was still wrapped up and pulled towards the toad's mouth. Just as Xiao was about to be pulled into the toad immortal's mouth, he suddenly saw a saber beam slash down, slashing at the middle of the toad immortal's tongue. Although this saber strike failed to sever the toad immortal's tongue, it left a wound. In pain and fright, the toad immortal immediately retracted its tongue, freeing Xiao. Zhouwen. Xiao retreated and saw that the person who had struck out was Zhouwen. Gentlemen, how about we work together to kill him first? Zhouwen said. The toad immortal's strength was extremely terrifying. Zhouwen could only barely survive alone. After the toad immortal finished off Xiao, it would probably be him and Tsukuyami next. The enemy of an enemy was a friend. As long as he could kill the toad immortal, Zhouwen didn't mind temporarily cooperating with the Holy Land saints. All right. Xiao agreed readily. At the same time, he said, can you crack his power? Nine Yang also wanted to know the answer to this question. Everyone had clearly seen that Zhouwen had slashed out a saber beam in the toad immortal's domain. Clearly, he wasn't suppressed by the domain's power. What Nine Yang and Xiao wanted to know was if Zhouwen could only be exempted or if he could help them be exempted. If Zhouwen was only exempted, their combat strength would still be unable to recover. Even if they worked together, it would probably be difficult for them to be of any use. It should be possible, but I have a condition. After killing him, everything will belong to me, Zhouwen said as he dodged the furious toad immortal's attack. Deal. Nine Yang was still hesitant, but Xiao agreed immediately. Xiao. Nine Yang wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Xiao. Nothing is more important than surviving now. Let's survive first, Xiao said with a wave of his hand. Nine Yang didn't say anything else. In fact, there was no time to say anything. The electromagnetic monster was still crazily attacking. Without the power of the Sun Divine Light, Nine Yang's strength was much weaker than the massive electromagnetic monster. When the toad immortal saw that Zhou Wen's essence energy wasn't sealed and that it was much stronger than before, killing intent surged in its heart. It opened its mouth and spat out another treasure fall coin that transformed into a golden beam of light that smashed at Zhouwen. Upon seeing Zhao's outcome, Zhouwen already knew how terrifying the treasure fall coin was. How could he allow the treasure fall coin to stick to him? He used teleportation to dodge the treasure fall coin's attack. As sure you simulated more and more trajectories of the money domain, it was almost complete. Although he had yet to condense an essence energy art, it had a faint restraining effect on the money domain, allowing Zhou Wen to obtain more authority in the money domain. However, the moment Zhou Wen teleported out, the treasure fall coin slammed into his forehead. Zhou Wen immediately felt all the essence energy in his body disappear as he fell from the sky. Thankfully, Zhou Wen still had his physical strength and reaction speed. He flipped and landed on the ground, preventing his head from hitting the ground. Zhou Wen wanted to condense his essence energy, but he couldn't control it. Apart from the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder that was still circulating, the other essence energy arts had been completely sealed. The Dragon King armor on his body was sealed as it turned into a tattoo that returned to Zhou Wen's body. Zhou Wen's connection with the other 8 companion beasts was instantly severed, greatly weakening Zhou Wen's strength. Zhou Wen reached out to remove the ancient coin on his forehead, but the ancient coin seemed to grow on his bones. Unless Zhou Wen smashed his head apart, there was no way he could remove the ancient coin. I once had a natural enemy in the mythical era. How dare a few mere humans dream of fighting me? The Toad Immortal said disdainfully as it brandished its tongue again and swept towards Zhou Wen, who had lost his essence energy. From the Toad Immortal's point of view, Zhou Wen was the greatest threat. Although Zhou Wen was the weakest, he was also proficient in taboo powers. He was the most likely to pose a threat to it. Chapter 1644. Zhou Wen's strength was at best equivalent to a mortal stage. After losing the Dragon King armor and the 8 companion beasts, he was far from being able to fight the Toad Immortal. With a flash of golden light, Zhou Wen retreated with all his might, but he couldn't dodge in time. Bam! A figure charged over and slammed into the golden light from the side, forcefully diverting it from its trajectory, allowing Zhou Wen to dodge the calamity. The Toad Immortal's tongue stabbed into the glacier beside him, piercing a huge hole in the glacier. The ice shattered and splattered everywhere. Zhou Wen retreated repeatedly to avoid the ice. He swept his gaze and realized that the person who had struck the tongue was none other than Xiao. I can't stall for long. You have to hurry. With that said, without waiting for Zhou Wen's reply, Xiao had already charged to the other side. He raised a gigantic piece of ice and smashed it at the Toad Immortal in midair. Hurry up? What's there to grab? My teacher domain has been affected by the ancient coin. It's of little use now. It's useless even if I hurry up, Zhou Wen thought to himself, but Xiao was frantically grabbing the ice and throwing it at the Toad Immortal. He was clearly buying time for him. On the other side, 9 Suns had also lured the electromagnetic monster elsewhere. At the same time, he was creating space for him. Facing the ice, the Toad Immortal opened its mouth and sucked. All the ice was swallowed by it, unable to pose any threat to it. On the contrary, the Toad Immortal's tongue lashed out, and Zhao's strength was unable to contend against it. He was directly smashed into the rocks, and the rocks cracked. The bones in his body made cracking sounds, and blood flowed uncontrollably from his mouth. Zhou Wen continued retreating rapidly, hoping to distance himself from the Toad Immortal. However, it was just too fast. Without the augmentation of the 8 pets, Zhou Wen was far inferior. Before he could retreat far, the Toad Immortal's tongue wrapped around him again. Zhou Wen pushed Transcendent Flying Immortal to its limits, but he only managed to circle around it twice. He couldn't avoid it a third time. Just as the tongue was about to wrap around Zhou Wen, a boulder suddenly flew over and smashed into Zhou Wen, sending him rolling away. Although it wasn't a light hit, Zhou Wen still managed to dodge the tongue's attack. In the distance, 9 Yang held a rock in his hand and smashed it at the Toad Immortal's tongue. Although it was instantly shattered by the tongue and was useless, it gave Zhou Wen some time. 9 Suns was wrapped up by the electromagnetic monster's tentacles and smashed into the ground. Large chunks of rock shattered, and his body bounced up along with the rubble. Blood bloomed like a flower. It's useless even if you protect me. Cold sweat trickled down Zhou Wen's forehead when he saw that they wanted to protect him. Earlier, when the treasure fall coin hadn't struck him, he could indeed be of some use. Now, however, he was completely useless. Yu's powers were suppressed to the point that they couldn't leave his body. Ignoring the fact that he could help Nine Yang and Xiao escape the influence of the money domain, even he couldn't escape it. Unless Yu could convert the power of the money domain into an essence energy art, he would be able to escape his present predicament. However, Zhou Wen had tried for so long and was almost able to piece together the trajectory of the money domain. However, he was just short of that tiny bit. He hadn't been able to piece it together after such a long period of time. Now, in such a difficult environment, Zhou Wen didn't have the confidence to do so. However, Nine Yang and Xiao seemed to place all their hopes on Zhou Wen. Even though they were injured, they kept protecting Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen was somewhat dumbfounded and even didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What the F***ck is going on? Zhou Wen gritted his teeth and circulated his Shiryu. At this point, he had no choice but to risk his life. In order to protect him, Xiao and Nine Yang suffered heavy injuries one after another. It looked like they wouldn't be able to last much longer. Hurry up and complete it. Zhou Wen circulated his Shiryu with all his might to analyze the money domain, but the effect was very poor. He couldn't analyze the last part that was missing. This darn ancient coin. As Zhou Wen ran through the ruins of glaciers and rocks, he cursed inwardly. If he hadn't been suppressed by this ancient coin, he wouldn't have been in such a sorry state. Ancient coin. Wait. Zhou Wen seemed to have figured something out as he used his Shiryu to analyze the ancient coin on his forehead. Xiao was already in a miserable state, but Nine Yang was in an even worse state. After all, there was still a Heaven Realm electromagnetic monster chasing him. At that moment, Nine Yang was already heavily injured. He was swept up by the electromagnetic monster as tentacles wrapped around his body and pulled him towards the meat pillar. Xiao was powerless at that moment. He had just been sent flying by the Toad Immortal's slap. All his bones felt like they had fallen apart. He couldn't even protect himself, much less save Nine Yang. Am I really going to die here? Nine Yang sighed inwardly. Suddenly, a beam of light shot into the sky, illuminating everyone's eyes. Before Nine Suns could see what the light was, it flashed past him, drew an elegant arc and stopped in the sky. Crack! Crack! The tentacles that wrapped around Jiu Yang all broke off one by one. Jiu Yang instantly regained his freedom. At the same time, the sun god light in his body surged out again, causing his entire body to turn into light. He was like a human-shaped sun. Nine Yang looked at the figure in the sky in pleasant surprise. Indeed, he saw Zhou Wen standing in midair in the Dragon King's armor. In his hand was the bamboo blade that glowed coldly. The tip of the blade was still dripping with blood. I've finally made it. Xiao sensed the strange power emanating from Zhou Wen's body. The primordial energy in his body stirred, but due to the suppression of the treasure fall coin, he was unable to move. He can actually recover his primordial energy. Unfortunately, under the treasure fall coin, everything. Before the Toad Immortal could finish its sentence, its dead fish eyes suddenly focused. Zhou Wen reached out and grabbed, plucking the treasure fall coin from his forehead. Treasure fall coin? Is that what you're talking about? Zhou Wen pinched the treasure fall coin with his fingers and exerted force, forcefully shattering it. The coin fragments scattered from his fingers like sand. How is this possible? The Toad Immortal's eyes nearly popped out. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Even in the mythical era, he had relied on the treasure fall coin to be invincible. He had defeated countless terrifying powerhouses. However, the treasure fall coin had been crushed by a human. This was something he had never even imagined in the past. After Zhou Wen crushed the treasure fall coin, his figure flashed and appeared in front of Xiao. He pressed his fingers on the treasure fall coin on Zhao's body and exerted a little force, forcefully shattering the treasure fall coin into pieces that fell to the ground. Chapter 1645. As the treasure fall coin shattered, Zhao immediately returned to normal. When he moved, it was as though an illusion was following him, as though he was wandering between the void and reality. Impossible! Toad Immortal was still in disbelief as he powered his money domain with all his might. However, under the influence of Zhou Wen's sure domain, the effects of the money domain were completely eliminated. It could no longer affect Zhou Wen and company in the sure domain. Zhou Wen used the sure domain to scan the treasure fall coin and finally completed the final piece of the puzzle. The trajectories in the sure domain transformed into streams of light that entered the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, condensing into the source of all evil. When some primordial energy arts were born, the sure domain immediately restrained the money domain. Wherever the sure domain was, the money domain could no longer display any effect. Even the treasure fall coin was affected. Under the restraining effects of the sure domain, it was easily crushed by Zhou Wen. I'm finally back at the starting line. Zhou Wen heaved a sigh of relief. They finally had the capital to fight Toad Immortal on the same stage. Before Zhou Wen could take action, Xiao had already stood up. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Toad Immortal in midair. Toad Immortal's heart skipped a beat. He was very impressive and strong. He was Toad Immortal, but all of this was built on the effects of the money domain and the treasure fall coin. Back then, Toad Immortal had been able to wreak havoc in Queen Mother of the West's dimensional zone without dying because of this unique technique. Now that the money domain had lost its effects and the treasure fall coin had been destroyed by Zhou Wen, Toad Immortal immediately lost most of his confidence. They were both at the heaven realm, and he had seen Zhao's combat strength. Without the money domain and the treasure fall coin, Toad Immortal knew that he wasn't Zhao's match. Furthermore, there was Nine Yang and Zhou Wen. Toad Immortal knew that where there's life, there's hope. He turned around and wanted to escape. It wouldn't be too late to think of a way to deal with Zhou Wen when he was alone. But who knew that as soon as Toad Immortal turned around, he would see Sue behind him, smiling at him. But that smile made Toad Immortal feel a chill down his spine, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. F***CKU. The Toad deity suddenly exerted force, the golden light on his golden robe trembled violently, and he spat out a treasure fall coin from his mouth, smashing it towards Xiao. However, within the sure domain, no matter how his golden robe trembled, the money domain was useless. The treasure fall coin was no longer as terrifying as before. Although it could still be shot out, it was easily dodged by Xiao. Pa. Like a ghost, Sue appeared in front of Toad Immortal. His palms slapped back and forth, causing Toad Immortal's head to shake left and right. His face was almost smashed. The sound of bones breaking could be heard clearly. The Toad Celestial Toad waved his hands, wanting to fight to the death with Xiao, but when he pounced on Xiao, he only pounced on an illusion. Behind him, another Xiao appeared, and a blade-like leg chopped at the Toad Celestial Toad's waist, sending the Toad Celestial Toad flying. Zhou Wen only saw the sky filled with Xiao's illusions surrounding the Toad Celestial Toad, attacking it crazily. He couldn't tell which was the illusion and which was the real person. The real person and the illusion seemed to be able to switch at any time, causing the Toad Celestial Toad to scream miserably, swaying back and forth like a roly-poly toy. Blood constantly spewed out from Zhao's attacks, and it was unknown how many bones in his body had been broken. We agreed that everything on him would belong to me. Zhou Wen panicked when he saw this. If this continued, the Toad Celestial Toad would definitely be beaten to death by Xiao. If Xiao took the items and ran, Zhou Wen might not be able to catch up to him. Bam! Zhao's final kick landed directly on the Toad Celestial Toad's head, smashing it into its chest. The Toad Celestial Toad's body was like a comet as it slammed into the planet, creating a huge ring-shaped crater. Its distorted body no longer looked human. "I naturally keep my promise," Xiao said indifferently, having no intention of picking up the corpse. Zhouwen didn't care as he wanted to rush over to pick up the corpse. What Zhouwen wanted the most was actually the Celestial Toad's calamity origins. This was because the Celestial Toad's domain power was a taboo power. This was similar to Yu's attribute. Perhaps the Celestial Toad's calamity origins could help Yu advance to the Hell stage, or even the Heaven stage. In that case, even without the augmentation of the Dragon King armor and the 8 companion beasts, Zhouwen would be able to fight a Heaven stage expert. Zhouwen hoped that the Celestial Toad had the calamity origins, but before he could go over, the Celestial Toad's body moved. "It's still not dead?" Zhouwen and Xiao were taken aback. No matter how they looked at it, the Celestial Toad was doomed from the injuries it had suffered. It wasn't a calamity creature that was good at recovery, so it was impossible for it to survive. Just as the two of them were feeling puzzled, the Celestial Toad's body twisted as it stood up. Its actions were very strange. Its body twisted like a zombie. In the next second, a large amount of white matter surged out of the Celestial Toad's body and instantly enveloped it. "That's this planet's companion beast. It's not dead yet." Zhouwen and company immediately knew what it was. Indeed, after the white matter devoured the Celestial Toad's body, it quickly distorted and shrank. Soon, it turned into the strange companion beast that resembled white jade. From its appearance, it wasn't injured at all, much less digested by the Celestial Toad. Furthermore, from the looks of it, its body had become even more majestic. It was clearly much taller and stronger than before. Its aura had also become stronger. Be careful. This companion beast is very good at devouring and mimicking. Xiao looked at the companion beast with a solemn expression. Previously, the companion beast had been able to mimic his mental mutation and combat abilities. Now that it had devoured the Celestial Toad, Xiao was worried that it had even mimicked the Celestial Toad's abilities. As it turned out, Xiao's worries weren't unnecessary. The companion beast swept its gaze across everyone as its body suddenly emitted an intense golden light. Ancient coins flew out of its body. "Holy sh*t!" Zhouwen exclaimed in surprise as his eyes widened. Not only had the Celestial Toad's abilities been learned by the companion beast, but it had also become even stronger. Previously, when the Celestial Toad used the money domain, the money that formed the domain was only ordinary money. Only the ancient coin that condensed from its mouth was the treasure drop coin. However, the ancient golden coins emitted by the companion beast were all treasure drop coins, forming a domain completely formed from treasure drop coins. The power of the sure domain could indeed restrain the treasure drop coins, but it wasn't as easy as restraining the money domain. Now that the entire domain was formed from treasure drop coins, the sure domain's restraining effect on the money domain was immediately weakened. Thankfully, in the sure domain, the money domain was still unable to play a strong role. The companion beast's body tore through the void and instantly appeared in front of Xiao. Chapter 1646. The companion beast punched at Zhao's abdomen, but Zhao's figure transformed into a phantom. The punch passed through his body, failing to injure him. Zhao's true body appeared on the other side of the companion beast and similarly punched at the companion beast's head. The companion beast didn't seem to be able to dodge in time and was struck in the head by Zhao's punch. However, Zhao's fist passed through its head as though it had missed. It was also a phantom. Zhao's pupils constricted as he immediately turned his head. He saw an identical companion beast appear in another direction. The companion beast's fist was already in front of his face. The exchange of reality and illusion brought Xiao back to the phantom from before. The body that had been struck in the face had turned into a phantom. However, when Xiao returned, he realized that the companion beast he had believed to be a phantom had similarly punched him in the abdomen. A terrifying force entered his body through his abdomen, causing all his muscles and bones to tremble. He flew out and barely stopped after flying for dozens of kilometers. Isn't that Zhao's ability? The companion beast has actually learned it. Zhou Wen and Nine Yang were alarmed when they saw the companion beast phantom vanish, leaving only the true body behind. Zhao's ability wasn't only the power of the Trajectory Holy Temple, but also his own insights and psychic mutation abilities. Even a saint of the Trajectory Holy Temple wouldn't be able to master such an ability. The companion beast could actually mimic it and use such an ability to injure Xiao. It was obvious how terrifying it was. The companion beast's figure flashed and appeared in front of Zhou Wen. Its fist was so fast that it was almost invisible as it struck at Zhou Wen's abdomen. Zhou Wen pushed Transcendent Flying Immortal to its limits as his figure gracefully drew an arc in the air, dodging the companion beast's attacks again and again. The companion beast's entire body was like a weapon as it attacked Zhou Wen crazily. After a round of attacks, it failed to injure Zhou Wen. Suddenly, it opened its mouth and a white beam flashed. It was so fast that even Transcendent Flying Immortal couldn't dodge in time. Its body was bound by a white strip. It was the companion beast's tongue. This fellow actually learned Toad Immortal's move. Zhou Wen held the bamboo blade in one hand and slashed at the tongue that bound his body. With the sharpness of the bamboo blade and Zhou Wen's strength, the strike only left a shallow wound. It failed to sever the tongue. Such a wound would probably require dozens of slashes to sever the tongue. Zhou Wen didn't have much time. The tongue pulled him towards the companion beast and instantly arrived in front of it. Just as he was about to be pulled into its gaping mouth, Zhou Wen was stunned. The sun divine light tore through the sky like an aurora and struck the companion beast. The companion beast had no choice but to dodge the sun divine light's attack. Zhou Wen temporarily wasn't pulled into its mouth. At that moment, Xiao rushed over. When the companion beast dodged the sun divine light, he appeared behind Zhou Wen like a ghost. His 10 fingers were like blades as he repeatedly slashed at the tongue. The force that could slice through the void left deep marks on the tongue. In pain, he released Zhou Wen and retracted his tongue into his companion beast's mouth. 9 Suns, come over. Let's attack together, Xiao shouted at 9 Suns. 9 Suns was already rushing over. At the same time, the electromagnetic monster that was chasing him rushed over. Zhou Wen immediately understood what Xiao was up to. The 3 of them attacked the companion beast together. Although the electromagnetic monster was an enemy, adding an enemy to an enemy might not necessarily make it a stronger enemy. With the 3 of them added together, their combat strength would become stronger, but the companion beast and the electromagnetic monster might not necessarily become stronger. Zhou Wen activated Transcendent Flying Immortal. He was as agile and elegant as a perfected immortal in the sky. While attacking the companion beast, he also used the electromagnetic monster to restrain the companion beast's attack. Although the electromagnetic monster was at the heaven realm, its intelligence was only average. Furthermore, after being controlled by the companion beast's power, it was only left with combat instincts. Its arrival instead became a cover for Zhou Wen and company. From time to time, they would use the electromagnetic monster to block the companion beast's attack. Zhou Wen's bamboo blade drew out arcs as it slashed at the companion beast from different directions. 9 Suns' divine light of the sun also struck the companion beast from different directions. Zhao's illusions surrounded the companion beast from all directions. Although this was the first time the 3 of them were working together, they seemed to have a tacit understanding as their teamwork was flawless. Bam! After all, it was difficult for the companion beast to fend off 6 opponents with 2 fists. While it was distracted, it was struck in the back by 9 Suns' divine sun fist. Its white jade-like muscles were charred black by the divine light of the sun. Taking advantage of the companion beast's stagger, Zhou Wen's saber and Zhao's fingers constantly slashed at the companion beast. Zhou Wen's bamboo blade slashed crazily, leaving saber marks on the companion beast's body. Zhao's finger force constantly tore apart the companion beast's body. Nine Suns' fists struck continuously as the three of them unleashed their strongest strength. They attacked the companion beast's body from three different directions. The companion beast staggered as the wounds on its body increased. At that moment, the electromagnetic monster rushed forward and swept its tentacles towards Zhou Wen and company. Zhou Wen had no choice but to divert his attention to brandish his saber and slash at the electromagnetic monster's tentacles. After a few flashes, he sliced off a tentacle. When he turned his head to look at the companion beast, he realized that Nine Suns' divine light of the sun and Zhao's finger force had penetrated its body. As for the companion beast's body, it gradually dissipated like a phantom. The three of them scanned their surroundings and soon discovered that higher up in the sky, the companion beast was standing above the clouds. The wounds on its body were healing at an unbelievable speed. "I can't give it time to heal." Shao Qi took a step forward and arrived in front of the companion beast. Even though the companion beast had learned his abilities, Shao didn't believe that he would lose to the same ability. Furthermore, he knew this ability very well. He also knew what weaknesses it had. Shao Qi's 10 fingers moved in unison, transforming into spatial rifts that slashed at the companion beast. However, in the next second, Shao, Zhou Wen, and Nine Yang widened their eyes. They saw the companion beast's figure move like an immortal as it drew out an elegant arc, dodging Zhao's spatial rending force one after another. It was none other than Zhou Wen's transcendent flying immortal movement technique. Not only was it transcendent flying immortal movement technique, but even the concept was identical. What's going on with this companion beast? Zhou Wen and company couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. The companion beast's strength had far exceeded their imagination. Chapter 1647. But now there was no way out. Zhou Wen and Nine Yang charged forward without any hesitation. Nine Yang's divine light of the sun penetrated everything and illuminated everything. It was an unavoidable force. However, under the divine light of the sun, the companion beast's body turned into a phantom. Its true body strangely appeared behind Nine Yang as its fingertips slashed at Nine Yang's neck like a blade. Zhou Wen's body was like a flying immortal as he slashed down with the bamboo blade. Zhao's figure also strangely appeared on the other side of the companion beast as his fingers stabbed at the companion beast's eyes. The companion beast's fingertip that was slashing at Nine Yang didn't change. The other monkey claw-like palm flicked the bamboo blade, causing it to change directions and slash at Shao. Shao and Zhou Wen quickly changed their strengths and barely avoided the situation of them killing each other. However, the companion beast's fingers had already slashed at Nine Yang's neck. At the same time, its hoof-like feet kicked out at lightning speed. With a sun-like glow, it kicked Zhou Wen and Shao, sending them flying. The armor on Zhou Wen and Zhao's chests had been smashed. The terrifying light charred their flesh like charcoal. Nine Yang had already tried his best to rush forward, but a bone-deep wound appeared on his neck. Blood was gushing out. Instantly, all three of them were injured. "This guy is a freak." Zhou Wen forcefully suppressed the wound on his chest. When he saw the companion beast charge at him again, he hurriedly dashed in the direction of the electromagnetic monster and used it to block the companion beast's attack. Just as Zhou Wen circled behind the electromagnetic monster, he saw a white light flash in the companion beast's mouth. Its tongue wrapped around the electromagnetic monster and pulled its huge body towards its open mouth. The electromagnetic monster's body was extremely huge, but when it was pulled to the companion beast's mouth, it strangely shrank and was swallowed. The companion beast didn't rush over for the time being. Nine Yang stopped the wound on the back of his neck and gulped. This fellow might not have been at the calamity grade. No matter what it was in the past, we have to kill it now. Otherwise, we will be the ones dying. Zhao's expression was solemn. Do you know the origins of this companion beast? Zhou asked. It was definitely not a coincidence that Xiao and Jiuyang were able to come here. They must know something that allowed them to find such an inconspicuous place in the universe among the millions of stars. Nine Yang and Xiao exchanged looks before Xiao said, "There's no need to hide anything now. This companion beast's origins are somewhat special." Xiao Chun briefly explained the companion beast's origins, but he didn't mention that the companion beast still had something on it. Zhou couldn't help but be taken aback after hearing that. You mean that this planet should actually have two companion beasts? Zhou asked Xiao. In theory, there should be two. However, the other one should have been sucked dry of its nutrients by the parasitic companion beast. The chances of it surviving are very low, Nine Yang said. That might not be the case. Zhou couldn't help but think of the bees in the plant. He had always believed that the bee was the companion beast of this planet because it had the various characteristics of a companion beast. However, after this companion beast appeared, Zhou overturned his previous speculation. He believed that the bee was a native life form that resembled a companion beast that the planet had nurtured. Now that he heard Zhao's explanation, Zhou was very suspicious. Although this planet had been parasitized by a companion beast, the original companion beast hadn't died. It was very likely that both companion beasts had survived. However, he didn't know which one was the original companion beast of this planet and which one was the parasite. The companion beast didn't give Zhou any time to consider. After floating in the air for a moment, it launched another attack. Its body charged over like a phantom. The phantoms used transcendent flying immortals movement technique as they charged at the trio. Originally, the three of them were attacking the companion beast, but now it seemed like the three of them were being attacked by the companion beast. Bam! The phantoms were Xiao Chen's techniques, but when used by the companion beast, they seemed even more powerful than Xiao Chen. Not only was it impossible to tell which one was the phantom, but each phantom seemed to have offensive power. Zhou and company didn't last long before they suffered varying degrees of injuries. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before they were beaten to death. Zhou had no choice but to use the human Emperor Heaven's sacrificial domain. Although this domain was useless against him, Xiao and Nine Yang's injuries rapidly healed within the domain. This crappy domain clearly has such powerful healing abilities. Why can't it heal me? Zhou was extremely vexed. Xiao and Nine Yang's injuries rapidly healed. They were originally very happy, but when they saw Zhou situation, their expressions turned odd. Zhou strength had clearly healed them, but Zhou injuries didn't quickly heal. This was just too strange. You really are a model example of sacrificing yourself for others, Xiao said loudly as he fought. He had already guessed what was going on. Do you think I want to? This crappy domain of mine can heal anyone but myself, Zhou said gloomily. He had already used his transcendent flying immortal movement technique with all his might, but the Phantom's transcendent flying immortal movement technique concept wasn't inferior to his. Their speed was even faster than his, making it more and more difficult for him to fight. The injuries on his body increased. Although Nine Yang and Zhao's situation was much better because of the human Emperor Heaven's sacrificial domain, they couldn't even fend for themselves. They didn't have the strength to help Zhou. They also knew very well that a large part of the reason why they could hold on was because of Zhou's dual domains. One domain helped them block the money domain's seal, while the other domain helped them quickly heal. Without these two domains to protect their lives, it was impossible for them to last until now. Zhou also knew that he couldn't hold on for much longer. He kept thinking about how he could escape his present predicament. With the teacher domain and the interstellar teleportation ability, he might be able to escape. However, if he were to escape just like that, Tsukuyomi, who was under the glacier, would definitely die. With this companion beast's keen senses, it was impossible for it not to discover Tsukuyomi's existence. I can only take a risk now. Zhou thought of the bee in the ice pool. If it was really another companion beast on the planet, be it a native companion beast or a parasitic companion beast, in theory, the two should be enemies. After all, the parasite had snatched the nutrients of the original companion beast. It was impossible for the relationship between the two to be friendly. Follow me. Zhou roared and called for Xiao and Ninyang as he forcefully rushed down the glacier. Although Xiao and Ninyang didn't know what Zhou was up to, they had no strength to fight once they left Zhou domain. All they could do was rush over and follow Zhou down the glacier. Chapter 1648. The companion beast chased after them as Zhou and company desperately fled down the glacier. Thankfully, with the glacier as cover, the companion beast's attack was somewhat hindered. Zhou, don't tell me you are trying to use the terrain to stall for time? Nine Yang's body released the sun-divine light like a volcano eruption, repelling the pursuing phantom. No, there's another companion beast down there. Perhaps that thing can save our lives. As Zhou spoke, he had already rushed to the side of the pool. There's another companion beast? Ninyang and Xiao were first taken aback when they heard Zhou's words before they immediately reacted. Could it be that the parasitized companion beast isn't dead? After Ninyang's first thought, he immediately thought of another possibility. He continued, "Which one is the parasitized companion beast?" "I don't know," Zhou said as he plunged into the pool. Ninyang and Xiao rushed down as well. The companion beast that chased after them struck the pool with terrifying force, blasting apart the pool and the nearby glacier, forming a huge crater. The pool wasn't deep to begin with, so it was directly blasted through. The strange plant was exposed. Zhou and company suffered immense pressure in the water as they were smashed into the glacier beside them. The surrounding glacier shattered. Only the place where the strange plant was remained intact. The plant and the bee in the fruit weren't affected. Zhou and company crawled out of the ice pit and prepared to fight, but they realized that the companion beast was floating in the air. It didn't continue attacking. Instead, it was staring at the bee and the strange plant. "They are indeed related," Ninyang said. "I never expected the parasitized companion beast to not die. I just wonder which of the two of them is a companion beast born from the planet itself." Xiao looked at the bee and then at the companion beast in the air. A glint flashed in his eyes as though he had discovered something. In fact, Ninyang had also discovered Zhao's discovery. The bee was holding a tiny trumpet in its claws. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem like something a bee should have. It was likely an external object. According to the saint deity, the escaped companion beast had accidentally taken away something before parasitizing the planet. Although the saint deity didn't say what it was very likely this tiny trumpet. Of course, this was only their guess, and it might not be accurate. The companion beast that was chasing seemed to be afraid of the tiny bee. It floated in midair and didn't come down. It kept staring at the tiny bee, its gaze focused on the tiny loudspeaker. It didn't move, and neither did Zhou and company. Ninyang and Xiao didn't dare move as they waited for an opportunity. Zhou hoped that he could stall for time until Tsukuyomi finished absorbing it. When that happened, he wouldn't have any qualms about fighting or escaping. He wouldn't be as restrained as he was now. "Are you hiding something from me?" With Zhou's sharp observation skills, how could he not realize that the companion beast had been looking at the tiny megaphone? Furthermore, Ninyang and Xiao were also looking at Little Mouth, intentionally or unintentionally. This made Zhou even more certain that they knew something. Ninyang pondered for a moment before saying, "At this point, there's actually no need to hide it from you. According to what we know, when the companion beast passed through the mythical battlefield, it accidentally brought something into the planet. As the planet itself is protected by the laws of the universe, it's difficult for even a heaven realm existence to forcefully open the planet unless the companion beast inside the planet is born. Therefore, no one can take it out. What was it that the companion beast brought in? Zhou was extremely curious. He now roughly knew that Earth had once had a mythical era. In that era, countless powerful life forms had fought on Earth or even in the universe. However, for some unknown reason, these powerful existences either vanished or sealed themselves. According to the information Zhou already knew, the dimensional zones on Earth were very likely open in the mythical era. Later, they were sealed for some unknown reason. Only when the dimensional storms descended in modern times did the sealed dimensional zones open again. Therefore, Zhou had always been curious about what happened in the mythical era. Of course, this was only his speculation. Only the life forms that had experienced that era knew if that was the case. However, even an existence like Grim Demon, who had experienced that era, didn't know how the final mythical battle ended. Perhaps only an existence like the Dharch truly knows what happened in the final moments of the mythical era. Zhou had always felt that the Dharch definitely knew a lot of things. An existence like the Dharch still made Zhou feel like a bottomless abyss that was unfathomable. In the past, when Zhou was weak, he felt that the Dharch was very strong. Now that he could fight calamity-grade creatures, he didn't change his previous thoughts. In fact, the stronger he was, the more he found the Thearcha's strength unbelievable. That kind of wish power was a heaven-defying existence. Even a heaven realm domain paled in comparison. I don't know. Nine Yang shook his head and said, "The news we obtained is that the companion beast brought in something very important, but we don't know what it is. Now we suspect that it's the little trumpet in the bee's claws." If it's really the little trumpet, doesn't that mean that the little bee is the parasitic companion beast? The fellow we fought is a native of this planet? Zhou frowned. If the little trumpet is really that thing, this guess is very likely. Xiao had been observing the companion beast in the sky the entire time. Midway, he suddenly changed the topic. "Be careful. That fellow can't hold back any longer." Indeed, just as Xiao finished speaking, the companion beast rushed down. Its target was very obvious. It wasn't any of the three of them, but the little bee in the fruit of the plant. The companion beast stepped down, and the light on its foot was as dazzling as the sun. It was none other than the sun god beam that it had imitated from Nine Yang. Although the scorching power of the sun god beam wasn't enough, its destructive power was even more terrifying than when Nine Yang used it. The little bee in the fruit was still lying there as though it hadn't woken up. Even when the companion beast's sun-like foot stepped on the fruit, the little bee remained motionless. Boom! A powerful force struck the fruit, triggering a terrifying explosion. Even with Zhou and company's strength, they couldn't help but retreat from the shockwave produced by the explosion. Chapter 1649. After the explosion, Zhou and company looked at the plant and the bee. However, they saw that the spot where the plant had been had turned into a huge crater. The plant that had grown in the glacier had long vanished. Not a single leaf or vine was left behind. Where did the bee go? Don't tell me it was blasted to death just like that? Zhou scanned his surroundings, hoping to find the bee's ruins. He refused to believe that the bee had died just like that. Indeed, Zhou quickly discovered the bee's traces. It wasn't dead. At that moment, it was floating in the air and looked very awake. The bee wings on its back trembled, and its speed was so fast that it was almost impossible to see its wings. In its front claws, it still held the trumpet-like trumpet as its eyes stared at the companion beast that had retreated into the air. The companion beast also stared at the bee as though it had some qualms. It didn't attack again. In a blink of an eye, the companion beast seemed to make up its mind and attacked the bee again. This time, it was using Zhou Wen's transcendent flying immortal. Arcs of essence energy slashed at the bee from all directions like an inescapable net. No matter how he looked at it, the bee had no room to dodge. As the creator of transcendent flying immortal, Zhou Wen naturally knew how terrifying such an attack was. Unless the bee's speed far exceeded the companion beast's, it could only await death. Just as Zhou Wen thought that the bee was about to be in trouble, he saw the bee seem to finally wake up. It placed the trumpet in its claws by its mouth, puffed up its cheeks, and blew hard. A loud and sharp sound came from the trumpet. When Zhou Wen heard it, he felt that it sounded like a trumpet. No, it shouldn't be described as resembling. It was practically a trumpet. The high-pitched sound was something no other musical instrument could replicate. It was music that went straight to the soul. Under Shi Yu's protection, Zhou Wen couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood when he heard the trumpet's sound. Nine Yang and Zhao's situation was even worse. Although they were also within Shi Yu's range and were protected by Shi Yu wasn't their own strength after all. The injuries they suffered were more serious than Zhou Wen's. Xiao and Nine Yang plummeted from the sky, crashing into the glacial ruins. No one knew if they were dead or alive. The companion beast also spewed out blood as it fell from the sky, heading straight for the devastated planet. It wasn't just Zhou Wen and company. Even the black and white wolves and the strange fish, who were fighting inside the planet, plummeted when they heard the Swona's sound. They slammed into the rock wall and fell. It was unknown if they were dead or alive. Every living being on the planet fell to the ground when they heard the sound of the Swona. No one knew if they were dead or alive. The little bee's wings trembled. Its claws were still holding onto the trumpet, but it didn't blow it again. The sound swept across the planet as if it was looking for living things. When Zhou Wen saw the bee's gaze sweep towards him, he immediately lay prone in the ruins of the glacier and rocks and played dead. He converged all his vitality and aura, hoping to deceive the bee. What the F***ck is this thing? It seems even more terrifying than the companion beasts that were chasing us. Are all the companion beasts on this planet so terrifying? I wonder how Tsukuyumi is. Will this lethal Swona sound affect Tsukuyumi and cause her to die? The more Zhou Wen thought about it, the more he felt that the possibility was very high. Even a Heaven Realm companion beast and an expert like Xiao couldn't withstand the Swona's sound and fell to the planet. Even now, it was unknown if they were dead or alive. In Tsukuyumi's state where she couldn't be frightened, the chances of her dying were probably very high if she heard such a sound. Even if she didn't die, the possibility of her suffering a chi deviation was very high. Unfortunately, Zhou Wen didn't have the chance to save Tsukuyumi even if he wanted to. The Swona's sound instantly filled the entire planet, making it impossible for Zhou Wen to save her in time. It was unknown if Nine Yang and Xiao were dead or alive. After all, after they fell from the sky, there was no sound. It was likely that the situation wasn't good. As Zhou Wen feigned death, he used Truth Listener's forces to scan the companion beast's location. He saw it struggle to stand up. Although the Swona's sound had caused him quite a bit of damage, it hadn't killed him. As the companion beast struggled to stand up, its injuries rapidly recovered. When it floated in the air, it had already recovered to its state before it was injured. It looked like it had never been injured. The companion beast stared at the bee as the cold glint in its eyes intensified. Its aura grew stronger and stronger. When a dog bites a dog, a mouthful of fur. Zhou Wen had no intention of getting up to participate in the battle. He only wanted to watch from the side as the two terrifying companion beasts fought. However, Zhou Wen didn't want to know who would win. Now, what he was most worried about was whether something had happened to Tsukuyumi. When the companion beast moved and attacked the bee, Zhou Wen secretly sneaked towards Tsukuyumi. However, when Zhou Wen arrived, he realized that the ice cellar had already collapsed and shattered into pieces of ice. Although he didn't find Tsukuyumi's corpse, it was likely that she was doomed. After all, Tsukuyomi couldn't move while absorbing the power of the moon essence basin. It was impossible for her to withstand such an impact. I've already tried my best. You can't blame me if you die. Jowon sighed inwardly. He had worked hard for so long, but he ultimately couldn't save Tsukuyomi's life. Since Tsukuyomi was doomed, Jowon no longer had any reason to continue fighting. He was already considering how to escape. Of course, Jowon didn't immediately escape. He hid in the glacier ruins and feigned death. He wanted to wait for the two terrifying companion beasts to decide the victor before making any plans. The two companion beasts were extremely terrifying existences. One seemed to be able to transform all the powers in the world for its own use. It was like an unkillable monster. As for the other bee, all it did was blow its trumpet. Even a heaven realm creature couldn't withstand it. How impressive was this? Jowon was now basically certain that the bee was a parasitic companion beast. The trumpet-like item was very likely the item he had lost in the battlefield of God. What's that trumpet? Just blowing it has such might. If the bee were to use it to play a tune, wouldn't it be even more terrifying? Jowon thought of the music produced by the bubbles. Back then, music that didn't contain any power could already make humans and dimensional creatures commit suicide. If the tune was played by the trumpet, Jowon really didn't know what the consequences would be. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.